All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Apocalypse Podcast. Today I am very fucking hyped and excited. We're going to be talking about top 5 favorite Magic the Gathering mechanics. And the people going to be doing the talking are myself, a co-host, Kyle. We have my brother.
It's Taylor, and that's this voice.
Taylor. That's the one. And a freaking great guest today. Love this guy. He's my favorite. His name is Carver. Carver, say hello.
Hello, everybody. I'm Carver.
Yes.
Oh, long time.
Okay,
Just
so-
for context, long time high school friend. So
Yes.
all insults in context are both true and for comedic effect.
Yeah,
I gotta
we've-
make it legally so no one can sue me for libel.
Oh, true, yeah. Okay, yeah. We've known Carver for like 15 years. It's been
It's
a long time.
unsettling
It's
to
really great.
hear you say that because I don't like hearing that number out loud. But
I think
that's
it
all right.
has been, right? Like, I'm 32. I met Carver when I was a junior, about 16. So
Damn, that's so
yeah,
true.
like longer than that. Yeah, it's actually. I was thinking about this the other day. I was talking to Lauren about Andrew, and like, I met him when he was 6 years old, and he is now 30. Like, it's crazy to think about that. I've known this guy like virtually his entire life, and he's known me, obviously the same. So I don't know.
It's
man.
creepy. He has no formative memories without you as like an existing part of it. I don't know, man.
That's kind of
Too
how I
much
am for him. Yeah, like
responsibility.
it's like from me being a child, Andrew is always just like floating around in my head in memories, popping in and out. Like he's just always been there. It's crazy. Daniel too, but Daniel was like such an annoying little shit gay boy for so long. Because he was
Nailed
he
it,
was
dude.
really young.
That one's good.
Yeah.
You know what has
mean, it's
also
true. It's
made
true.
the bond with Andrew so great? That was a sick segue, all right? It was a Magic the Gathering
Yeah.
segue, and I didn't know how to
What?
commit to it, so I'm just going to come out and say it. I need to start talking about this stuff because it's been on the edges of my brain for the past, 7
Yeah.
days, and I need to get my thoughts
Yes, me
out there
too.
and off this stupid sticky
All right,
note.
yeah. Start it. Number 5, your 5th favorite mechanic. Go.
Okay, so for me, I'm before we start, because before the podcast, I had to set up
Okay, don't go.
the edge case of the mechanic that is the best word. It is nothing about how good it is. Kyle, what mechanic did you think it was, just out of context before?
So wait. You're saying your 5th favorite is the favorite because it's a good word?
No, I'm just saying before I tell you my number 5, I have to tell you personally what my favorite word is. I just need to get it off my chest.
No. We're doing that later.
Oh, you
Honorable
son of a
mentions
bitch.
and
All
shit.
right.
no,
come
okay. I was
afterwards.
going to
Yeah,
wonder about that. I was actually going to wonder if we're doing them early or
fine.
not.
Honorable mentions come
Okay.
at the end,
All
right? That's how
so
it goes.
the number 5 I actually had some thoughts on this is like the mechanic that I think invites the most interesting gameplay that I don't necessarily have like any fond memories for like a specific card, and that is Delirium. I think is one of the coolest like
Oh.
Wow.
yeah, because like it encourages. I know it's so stupid that it just encourages to play with more key card types, but I always like on-board Magic way more than like spell slinging. So like incentivizing enchantments and artifacts, land as a type to go in the graveyard now changes how you play with lands, and even incentivizes more sacrificey type outlets, but also combat focused ones. So like it can go in any direction. It can be a self mill thing, and I've never seen too many
Wow.
like Delirium cards that are really like gross because of their Delirium ability. So like I guess except for like Unholy Heat, that thing's kind of tuned out of proportion, but even that got kind of power creeped
modern
anyway.
only card.
Yeah.
You also must have not played in standard.
No,
when,
and that's the
Grim Flayer was around. God,
so
what an
my
annoying fucking card.
Magic the Gathering blind spot is Innistrad to oh god, maybe like Ixalan. I couldn't think of the dinosaur place. So
Oh, okay.
So like basically the Magic's highest high is probably my blind spot. So I didn't play with Delirium in Standard. So
we started Magic at the highest high for sure, like right around Mirrodin, and obviously Kamigawa was like a downturn, but then after that, Ravnica into the Eldrazi plane, Zendikar, Jesus Christ, which wasn't after Ravnica, but I'm skipping around. But like that era of Magic was so good.
yeah, that's
Okay,
true.
I want to interrupt you though.
Yeah. Get some thoughts in there.
And yeah, let's get some back and forth going. Delirium is a great mechanic, and I did not expect that to be on anyone's list, and it is awesome because, as you said, onboard Magic is really fun. That's true. Like, it's really fun to have. Oh man, okay. This episode might be hard to get through. We're gonna talk fucking for so long about everything. Delirium is cool, especially because of the dual card types, like the enchantment creatures. Getting to hit like 2 of 4
true, that-
Delirium with 1 card, like it just, an artifact creature, for instance, being milled. I don't know. That's
Enchantment
really
lands are a thing now too.
true. Yes. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so like as and like what I like about cards like or keywords like Delirium is that that just gets stronger as battle is now technically part of Delirium. Because if I'm not mistaken, Delirium is like a threshold for card types, not necessarily, here are the 12 keywords on it. I believe it just calls out like for each card type.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Battle would. I'm assured that Battle would be one of them, right?
Yeah, so that
Is battle a new word? So like, would battle make Tarmogoyf stronger?
yes,
Too?
it does.
Wow.
Yeah, anything that doesn't like when it just says card types and then there's in the parentheses reminder text, any cards that do that scale up as they add card types. Granted, like, there's only been one since that card was printed, but still it's a mechanic that can only get better. They're not going to remove card types or make it worse. And what's also cool is when they kind of have what people are coining like Super Delirium, where there are some cards that care about the normal, I think it's 4 card types. But there are some that are like, yeah, and if it's 6, do an even better version of the ability in the more modern sets. So, like, the idea is that it's...
Oh, what was that? Was that Descent?
Descent also does
No,
that.
that's different.
But that
was
is different. But
that cares about the number.
it's in the
threshold.
most recent horror set. Oh my god, I forget what it's called. House of Usher. No, I can't. What is the haunted
Shitty TV show.
the haunted mansion set that just came out this year?
Betrayal at the House of Haunted Hill.
Okay, yeah, that set. Anyway, that had Delirium, and it has a card that if it's like 4 card types, it does its ability, but if it's 6 card types, you get an additional effect on top of it.
I thought it was number of permanents, actually. It was 4. If there's 4 permanent cards in your graveyard, it does something, and then 6, it does something else, right?
It's even better that I don't know the card name, so I can't just instantly look it up to clear it up.
Carver, do you know?
No, I don't know the newer one. I'm just thinking
sorry,
about
it's-
no. I'm just thinking about Delirium. I loved
House of Duskmourn? Was it?
that.
you
is
love Delirium?
correct.
Duskmourn, thank you.
Duskmourn. Yeah, Carver, we were all playing Standard at that time. How do you feel about?
Well, I also drafted a lot of the Shadows over Innistrad set. Like it's one of my
Yes, you
most like
did.
drafted sets probably, and I love Delirium. I was I thought maybe it was like like very like I always think of it as the Shadows over Innistrad mechanic, even though there's a bunch of other. It's been used in the Modern Horizon
It
sets
totally
and whatnot.
is. No, but it came out at that time. It was most prominent then, for sure.
Yeah, and I did forget about the new House of Duskmoor, whatever the name of that set was. But no, Delirium was a sweet limited mechanic. I loved it. Like there was always this weird tension between like when somebody cracks a Vessel of Nascency and they have 3 card types instantly in their graveyard, and now all of their Delirium cards are just so close to being turned on. Yeah, it was a very fun mechanic.
You actually brought up a good point.
fucking-
Hold on. This is something I know I didn't actually put in there. What also makes Delirium great is it makes other cards better, like targeted graveyard removal all of a sudden has a whole new lever of power to it because you can target their one land. It's like that's going to be hard to get another land in the yard. So like it, in addition to being incentivizing diverse deck building, it then like it makes other cards that are good against just graveyard decks in general. Like one card removal becomes way more powerful than a traditional like reanimation strategies and stuff.
Yeah, you take a sip of water there. Carver, I always associate Mind Rack Demon with you. I don't know if it's because you put it in your cube, or I think you've specifically mentioned that you just really like Mind Rack Demon. It's not even like the most powerful card anymore, but yeah, I remember I always associate you with Mind Rack Demon.
Yeah, oh yeah, I love Mind Rack Demon. It's great. It's a card in my cube. It'll probably always be in the cube. Like it's just such a I don't know what exactly feeds reanimator strategies. The delirium penalty it has. It's like this is one of the few cards that like has a penalty if you don't have delirium.
Yes.
It's like a really.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that.
It's such a weird angle on the ability in general. Yeah. So you're right. Mind Rack. I love Mind Rack. I love the art too. Just screeching, like losing its mind demon.
Yeah,
love it.
Whatever is like coming out of its body, it's really cool. Yeah, I think that I haven't looked them up, but that I do love when they make mechanics like that and they flip it on its head, where like Mind Rack Demon is you lose 4 life every turn unless you have delirium. So then he just gets rid of the downside. It's not like a card becoming more powerful like Threshold or like most other delirium cards. It's like this one has a downside and the downside goes away when you have delirium. It's really cool.
So I did find the super delirium card. It's omnivorous flytrap. It's
Omnivorous Flytrap. Here it is.
Yeah, if you have 4 cards or more, you distribute 2 1/1 counters on 1 or 2 target creatures. Then, if you have 6 or more card types, you double all the +1/+1 counters on those creatures.
I didn't really. Okay, you literally meant it was a delirium card that cared about 4 and 6. I did not know.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like,
that's
so
cool.
even when they've revisited it, they've added just a little twist that I think is objectively cool. Like, it's now making like 6 card types isn't a joke and is very fragile. Like a single card removed for that graveyard probably takes it down. But I don't know. That's a cool thing.
Yeah.
So,
man, I think for this episode I'm gonna try to do video editing and put the cards we're talking about on screen, because if people aren't intimately familiar with Magic, like we're just throwing around shit.
yeah, I'm gonna try to.
Well, obviously, no one's gonna listen to this if they don't like Magic anyway. But like even Ian, who likes Magic, he doesn't know what any of these cards do. Probably what half of these abilities do. Like he's not gonna be able to keep up with this. So I might have to do video editing for this
nightmare,
which could take I don't know how long. Okay, well let's move on, since we just talked for 10 minutes about
rules.
one of the 15 fucking mechanics we're supposed to cover here. Carver, do you want to go next?
Sure. The 5th one for me is Devotion. So Devotion is like probably so I started really getting to Magic like right at Avacyn Restored, and I think it was Return to Ravnica, which had some good mechanics in it too. But then Theros was like the time when I really got into Magic, and so there's nostalgic value there for me, and I just think that mechanic is like similar to Delirium. It's playing with what's on the board. It's rewarding you for playing cards of a certain, in this case, color. If anything, I think maybe they could do a little. They could do a little more with it. The iconic Devotion cards with Grey Merchant of Asphodel being one of them, and then obviously the gods. Like I wish they had more of like that god-like mechanic. Like this card's just unlocks a new ability while in play. You know what I mean? A lot of them are like when they enter the battlefield, do this equal to your Devotion.
Yeah.
But again, Devotion, just some of those cards just so iconic for me. Very, very into that mechanic for sure. Grey Merchant especially. So.
Yeah, Grey Merchant and Master of Waves.
Yes.
I remember. You always try to put that in your deck. Even just recently when we were playing EDH, you cut, I believe, Master of Waves from one of your decks, but like you're still playing with these big Devotion guys. Dude, the gods were so unbelievably fucking cool when they first came out. Like I remember in Theros was actually when I returned to Magic. I took a couple year break.
Yeah, you and me. That's what. That's the when I returned when I couldn't remember what set it was for. It was for Theros. Me and you both came back.
Yeah.
For it.
Yeah, and I remember I made a mono black Erebos deck because in one of the first packs I cracked, I got Erebos, and I was like, oh yeah, this guy's awesome. I'm making this deck. So I made a heroic based targeting deck that there was the one card that like when you target it, your opponent sacrifices a creature. I can't remember the name of it.
Agent of Fates, maybe.
Is it just Agent of Bolas? No, not Bolas. Agent of Erebos? No.
It could be
You might be right. It is like Agent of Fate or something. Anyways, yeah. So I had a mono black deck that ran, of course, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, and Erebos, and these, dude, they were just so powerful. These gigantic, indestructible enchantments that just have crazy powerful passive abilities, and then suddenly they turn into insane threats as you like amass a ward state. I mean, I don't know, such cool design. I love the gods so much.
Totally, yeah.
I was going to say that one of the things I love about Devotion too is I love a mechanic they come back with at a 2.0 version and they nail. Taking what was the Chroma, which was like a complete nothing for Boros in the original Ravnica set, and to have it be like so thematic. That's
I think Chroma was in Lorwyn, but yeah, it was, or not Lore, but the Lorwyn.
Oh,
I think
you're
it was
right.
in specifically Morning Tide or Eventide.
It's going to be really embarrassing when I Google Chroma, and it's going to be on Boros cards. And
Boros.
Yeah, like that was
What are you talking about?
I'm pretty sure it was the Boros like guild's thing. Oh no, it's Radiant.
No, that was Radiant.
Wow,
Radiant. Yeah.
All right, you got me. on
Radiant.
That one.
Radiant was terrible.
Yeah,
Chroma was
okay.
also terrible. I mean, they were both terrible. They didn't. They didn't really revamp Radiant.
They
That
did
just
not.
came
Yeah,
and
no.
went,
I
and
just
they never touched
wished
it
that was a
again.
swing and a miss for me. But it is.
Yeah.
But it is Chroma retooled, and but
Yes.
what I love the most, it like I just thought it was a cool thing, and I'm pretty Vorthosy in that like when I read it, I can envision the Greek mythology, like the idea of worship and like that kind of translating into mechanics. Like it tickles my brain in such a way that I kind of like it more than it deserves in some ways. But the God card specifically is what made Devotion to me such a cool mechanic. This idea that also it's such a complicated game piece of like it isn't a creature, and then as it goes back and forth, and I don't know. I thought that was such a cool representation of like once enough people worship this god, he's able to physically manifest and cause real harm. And all the gods were so fun and so powerful, but not in a like. I love cards that are engines. Like this is the card that lets you kind of build off of and go crazy, and all the gods were that in some way. Helios in the newest Theros to me is one of my favorites.
Heliod,
sorry, yeah, the one that gains life. You get to put a 1/1 counter on anything, and he has an activated ability to give anything lifelink. Ugh, so good and so annoying to. But anyway, yeah,
the fact that he's a 3-drop too. He's only 3 mana is so annoying.
Oh yeah,
and I think it was awesome too when they added the 2-color gods. Like how much that like changed it a little bit too. Yeah, I freaking love the god cards.
Keranos, the Izzet god, the blue-red one, is weirdly like one of my favorite cards ever, and it's a card I've literally never played with. I didn't make an EDH deck with him. He didn't ever make the list of an EDH deck I built. I didn't put him in anything. I didn't play him at the time he came out. I've like never touched him, but every time I see him, I get like a little excited. Not only is his art, I think, the best of all the gods, just like, I mean, I'm looking at it right now. It's just, he's like wielding a gigantic, like purpley pink lightning bolt. And he's like, he's got the god effect of being, you can kind of see through him into the cosmos. And it's these dark clouds surrounding him. And he's this giant purple god. Like, dude, he looks so badass. And his effect is so strong and simple and effective. And I've just never played with him in my life. But he looms large in my heart.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
When you think Devotion, Carver, do you think of the god cards, or are you thinking more of the dudes getting better on the ground? Like, what part of Devotion, like, kind of?
No, definitely the gods are at the foreground of my thinking, just because probably my deck for EDH that I've tinkered with the most is the Farah, God of the Polis. So I love this deck. I've made it into like an Enchantress based deck, and now talking about like the strategy around Afara, like the gods specifically, I have specific cards in this deck that are like sacrificing enchantments to like remove Afara's creature state. I've had a really cool memory playing EDH with some people at the library recently, and this guy like tried to kill Afara twice with like a exile effect while she was a creature, and I was able to like manipulate the creature status of her to avoid her getting
Oh
removed
man,
two times over.
that's
He like
so
wasted
cool.
multiple removal spells trying to get rid of her, and I just got to absolutely evade it, which just felt so it felt so cool and like
Yeah.
anyway, so that's more mechanical than it is like thematic or awesome, um but Taylor, I love how you talk about that because it is like such a cool thing. Like the gods are just like, see ya once your once your devotion's not high enough. Like
Yeah, not good enough. Like I got better things to do, dude. Come on,
You guys,
I'm not
you're
performing for a
posers.
crowd of 4 people. Get out of here. Fuck off.
yeah, right. I also really like. I mean, this does apply to the single devotion cards too. But another thing I love about devotion is how it can recontextualize hybrid mana and like heavy hybrid mana costs. Like you can like, and they didn't really do this much in the Theros sets. I only really played the original Theros a good amount. I don't know if they did this in the second iteration of it, but it's another little cool window or like avenue you can like use multiple different colors if they would have done that hybrid mana stuff. I certainly do that like in the cube or in my decks or whatever that you can benefit from that that mana symbol. But
Oh wait, what are you talking about? Hybrid
like
mana?
Godhead of the Awe, yeah, and how it like is a heavy blue devotion and a heavy white devotion. You know what I mean? Like that, or like Simic Guildmage, my background, where it's like blue and green devotion. You know what I mean? Like it only still counts it only still
Yeah.
counts as one, right? But it's still like, but it allows you to benefit from blue devotion cards and from green devotion cards in Simic Guildmage's case. So
Oh, yeah. I weirdly, I don't think I ever really have considered
Wow,
what
it's very
hybrid mana does
compatible.
for devotion.
It has a cool compatibility with hybrid mana, huh? That's awesome. Yeah, see, stuff like that is cool as shit. That's what's fun when you design something for 30 years. Weird overlapping stuff happens. I never thought about that.
Yeah, that's true. The hybrid mana coming in clutch for that stuff later. Okay, my turn. My fifth favorite mechanic is Delve.
Oh, boo! Get this man off the stage.
It's Delve. Okay, because first of all, it is a cool mechanic. I do not think it's balanced. They've brought it back a couple times and it's never worked. Every time they make a card with Delve, cough cough Hogak, who is an EDH general of mine. He plays way better as an EDH general, by the way. He's definitely like fun and fairly balanced in Commander.
Well, you're not trying to like break the turn 2 and win the game instantly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little different. So he's actually very, very fun as a commander, but it's the same thing. Like, yeah, Delve as a mechanic is something that just isn't quite tuned right, and they can't get it tuned right. But I don't know. You're probably going to notice a theme with a lot of my mechanics. I'm a graveyard guy. I love interacting with the graveyard. I love having this place that's supposed to be where everything goes to die instead be like another source of resources. Like that's so fun to me and it's cool and it just like breaks the game in a way that's super cool. Of course, like intentionally, but I love interacting with the graveyard, and Delve is a really cool way to do that, where as the game goes, like these cards that are initially unplayable suddenly become like not only playable but broken. Like you have a Gurmag Angler where it's a 7 mana 5/5, but then late game it's a 1 mana 5/5. Like it's just I love the balance of Delve. I love how it makes you tinker with your decks and build stuff, and yeah, I don't know. Delve. That's my number 5.
All right, I don't want to jump the line here. I boo it because I actually had a list. I was basically mechanics that I hate, and then what I found out is I don't like mana cheating. I want you to pay the resources on your gosh darn cards.
Yeah, I mean,
And
the two biggest offenders are Delve and Phyrexian mana are the two biggest things that they've tried to like, what if we could get people to pay mana in an alternate way? And both of them have failed miserably and been like fundamentally broken for a long time. So yeah, I mean, I get it. Mana is such a specific resource in Magic, and I don't know. It feels hard to make a mana cheating mechanic that's kind of fair.
I didn't want to go too hard before. I want to give Carver a chance to say how he feels about Delve before I finish my thoughts. So, Carver, what do you think about Delve?
I mean, I love Delve as an ability. Like, again, thinking about Khans of Tarkir being probably my favorite draft set. I loved it. I loved it in that set. I think it's fair and balanced in draft. Like, it's not it's really powerful, but it's not like it certainly doesn't feel cheap, because the best spells, if you're gonna like double spell, you need like a bunch of cards in your graveyard to like make a murderous cut 1 mana, and then you can unmorph another card or something. Like, so it's not like, I don't think Delve is busted in draft, and so I think it's really sick. I will say Kyle Hogak with the Convoke and Delve is pretty, like, having both is like, obviously it's the whole thing about him, but it is like, it can be quite nasty to play against, but he is really strong, and it is really fun for sure. But no, I think Delve is good. I don't know. I was thinking about Delve too as a mechanic I may have chose, and I was like, I don't know. I always think of Delve as like this super strong mechanic, but is that really just because of like Treasure Cruise, or like is it I don't
Time.
And Dig Through Time? Yeah, is it because like really I just looked up Delve. There's only like 30 cards that even mention Delve, and only 20 some of them actually have the ability.
I was going to add to what you're saying is basically that I think Delve is the biggest victim of a great mechanic marred by very low number of like bad apples, right? Because when they first did it, they printed a couple of cards that all are nuts. Then the next time they came back to it, as far as I can tell, was the next time, they also printed another obnoxious monster with it. So it's like and I think when you put it in the perspective of like limited, it feels so much more like cool to like then use the resources that like you put on the board into more resources you scavenge in to like draw cards or something like that. So like it seems like it's designed almost as a limited mechanic, like in those kind of like, you know, black green shells, which are all about taking life and then death and life, and so like it almost feels that like that's perfect for it. But when you allow people with resources to have access to it, it just gets off the rails too quickly. And maybe Kyle has given me PTSD, because ever since Golgari was a possible accessible, I've been dealing with graveyard as resource strategies, and then Grixis came along and then really just ruined my life.
Yep.
Cedrus, I've never hated a fictional thing more than Cedrus. Fuck that guy.
Well, he's a traitor. So.
That's so true, dude.
He's literally the traitorous king. Yeah, you know, I love the perspective that you have, Carver, because I forgot how much Magic you played outside of like kitchen table Magic and Standard, because I never did much draft. I only ever really did, you know, pre-release sealed, and then I would just play constructed with my friends, and I forgot how much you drafted it and played it in limited formats. And so like your perspective on cards is going to be pretty, I think, invaluable. I love that, because
yeah, it's a pretty
like
big,
you immediately coming in with like why Delve is way more balanced and harder to take advantage of in draft was like something I didn't even consider when I was picking the mechanic. So
yeah, when you have fetch lands and you have, when you're constructed with fetch lands and Street Wraith and whatever else, you can, and a Mishra's Bauble, you can build your graveyard up like super quickly, and then those cards like Treasure Clues and Gurmag, then Gurmag Angler even seems like it might be overpowered, you know what I mean? But in draft, it's just, I loved it. I thought it was, I'm looking at the cards now, man, so many. Saltai Scavenger, excellent. Hooting Mandrills, excellent, like super cool limited cards.
Yeah.
I love them, so.
Man, and before we move on to Taylor's number 4, I do have to shout out, when I was looking up Delve cards, I didn't realize this was a Future Sight mechanic.
Dude, Future
and I forgot,
Sight, it's got so much of that.
Tombs.
I know, I forgot about the king of Delve. It's Tombstalker. Yeah. Just an 8 mana, 5/5 flyer with Delve, and 6 of his 8 mana is colorless, so you could get him down to a double black 5/5 flyer. So cool. And at the time, in Future Sight, he just was not really played. People saw this mechanic, because Future Sight was like the wacky, crazy wackadoo set. people were like, "Whoa, that's a cool ability," but oh well. And like no one really touched Tombstalker, but he's a wicked ass card, super cool. And now with power creep, a 5/5 flyer for 2 like isn't even that much of a threat. So he doesn't have more than 4 keywords, so he can't really be played.
Well,
doesn't matter how
let's
cheap he
compare
is.
him to another card that's in Modern, right? Murktide Regent.
Oh,
Where Murktide Regent can be a 2-mana 3/3 flyer that enters the battlefield for each a +1/+1 counter for each instant or sorcery card exiled with it. Yeah, so unbelievable.
Yeah,
and then he
right.
continues
So
getting big. So yeah, Tombstalker is total crap compared to Murky Boy.
Yeah, I mean, Murktide Regent is like minimum 7/7 almost every single time.
Oh my god!
Probably
7
usually an
mana,
8/8.
3/3 flyer with Delve, and then it enters the 1/1 counter for each instant or sorcery you exiled with it.
Yeah,
And then
so the deck is just like 4 Murktides, 4 of those other
lordy.
big like serpents that get reduced for instant sorceries in your graveyard. I forget the names of them.
I had not seen that card before, or I'd seen it before, but I forgot about it. Crazy.
Something. Whatever. Anyways, yeah, Murktide just puts Tombstalker to shame. That's the power creep of Magic. But Taylor, what's your number 4?
Oh boy. Okay, so I don't have as much to say, and I probably should have put this one at 5, but I just it feels really cool for some reason, and it's Escape. I have Escape as my 4th favorite because I love this just relentless threat, and it turns and like the idea that you can't play a lot of Escape cards together because they all want to use the same pool of resources that's limited, so you only want like the one of your threats to have Escape. And partially it's because I know everyone hates Uro and Kroxa and all the Titans, but those are some of my all-time favorite cards. I just love like this recursive threat, and like if you play them fairly, I think they're really I like them a lot. And I think Escape is just a really cool way to do a recursive threat that is, I don't know, it's heads up. You can't really, it also makes mill into a more kind of like, it's a nice way for like a new player to see how you can use mill offensively and not as like it, or defensively, and you on yourself in a good way. Because I think that's like a sign of a really good player is like, I think his name is Corpse Connoisseur. He's like a black 2/1. When he enters and dies, you mill 4 cards, something like that. Roughly, that's all it does. That sounds like a downside to a new player. Because, like, why would you mill yourself? Like, who did, like...
You're talking about Stitcher Supplier?
Stitcher Supplier, maybe? Yeah.
Corpse Connoisseur is an unearthed card.
Okay, that's right. PTSD. Yeah. See, I told you, I do have PTSD from your stupid Sedris decks. But I think that this is a cool ability to help newer players understand why mill can be a helpful thing, or like it's also awesome as like you know, if in the discard deck, kind of like in Rakdos Shells, which is where a lot of Escape cards are. You know, they're good discard pitchers, and it turns anything that can turn like a negative into a positive. I think is a fun way to turn a lot of cards on their heads. So yeah, I just think Escape is cool. They should keep making stuff that have Escape. I think it's awesome. Graveyard. And like you, Kyle, you pointed out that you thought a lot of your mechanics were graveyard focused. So are mine. I'm just a green-white Timmy kind of player that I only want to play dudes on board and see stats get big. But all of my favorite like things that like really resonate and I think are awesome are all graveyard related. Like my first 2, both graveyard mechanics.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's just so cool to interact with the graveyard. It's just really fun and it's really satisfying. And like you said, it feels like a more advanced player type mechanic. Of course, like newbies will understand Escape and immediately go like, oh, you need more cards in your graveyard to get this out of the graveyard. But yeah, there's so many ways you can interact with it that it does make you feel
and just to put in,
feel like you've unlocked something. You know, you've unlocked the secret somehow if you've like.
You figure that stuff out. The other, to bring up limited, I played a shit ton of Escape or Theros Beyond Death, because it was on Arena and it was right when I was like, you know what? I'm going to actually start collecting and playing Magic the Green Arena. I'm going to play Magic, and that was the first set I officially started. So I played a crap ton of Limited, and Escape in Limited is so much fun for the same reason that Delve was back in the day. It turned certain threats that are like, there's like this 4/1 can't block, has to attack each turn, but escapes for like 1 mana and like 3 cards. And so it's like this relentless, super huge attacking threat that you can't block with, so you always have them on the offensive. And then Limited, like, this card is so like powerful because it kept coming back, even though it's dog shit in like every other conceivable way. So yeah, I have a little bit of bias of like that. I played with Escape a lot. But yeah, I think it's anything playing it in Limited really made me appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah, having not played it in Limited, I can read this ability though. My level of experience with Escape is like I've picked a couple for the cube. Of course, I know Uro and some of the other ones, some of the marquees. But to your point, Taylor, yeah, I love. I could imagine this being amazing in Limited. It's just an ability that gives you options as the game progresses. It's not unlimited, right? Like there is a cost. You can only exile so many cards. Eventually, you might get locked out of being able to use one. So yeah, I anything in Limited that gives you options later. You'll see this theme pop up with my picks later. Is something that I'm a huge fan of. Like it's just yeah, I love that type of Magic. It's all on board. It's all right there. You have to invest in it. It's not free. So yeah, I'm a fan of this pick for sure.
Yeah, I have very little experience with Escape. I pretty much didn't interact with it at all. I thought it was a cool ability. I thought it was a bit steep. Like everyone else, I saw Croxa, I saw Uro. They utterly dominated the formats that they were in, and I'm talking all formats. I mean, Uro had to be banned in everything because of how ridiculously
I was on the front
overpowered
lines for
he
those
was.
battles, so I promise you
Yeah, I mean,
that is real.
It was horrible. So yeah, I think thematically the cards are incredible. Awesome art. I love the idea of Croxa. Just this never-ending hunger god, like incarnate, that just eats and consumes forever. Like that's so cool. And even if you kill him, he just fucking comes back from the underworld and continues to eat. Like I love it. It reminds me of No Face in Spirited Away, actually. Oh yeah. So yeah, I don't have much to say other than I like the power of the cards. I like how thematic they are. Obviously a little too powerful, but
I think
cool. Yeah, I like it.
The last thing I'm going to say is one of the parts that I like about Escape is it turns on these like side effects. It used to be like you staple this effect onto a card and it's kind of free. That doesn't make the card overpowered. Like remove target card from a graveyard as an extra line on a card is like basically free. But within a format where Escape exists, that is now the cards that do that are so much more interesting. So that being like, I almost like Escape as a like environmental tool. Like if this ability is around and makes those other cards actually playable, and it'll make, so I'm always a big fan of like making everything more interesting. So that's all I have for Escape. So we can move on. I can tell from the lack of enthusiasm for when I said it, I was like, oh, neither of you played with this, so that's good. I can just say my piece, and then we can move past it. So Carver.
No, I mean it's cool. Yeah, I guess I didn't really consider that because we've all played Magic for so long. But I mean, even still, like you played with it enough that you think it's your 4th favorite mechanic. Like that's cool, and it's a mechanic that me and Carver just don't know that well. But it's one of your favorites. I mean, that in itself, I think is
the most
cool.
Magic I've played has been in the past 5 years of my life, ironically. So I have a lot of, I think, play in your guys' blind spots. So it'll be interesting. So Carver, what is your number 4?
Not to hop to my 4 too quickly, but Taylor, that point, I think we all kind of played like more constructed formats or limited formats at different times, which is kind of just interesting, like how you guys have so many, so much cards of, Shards of Alara and Zendikar, and I'm like, I don't know what, 6 years past that. And then if you played a lot in the last 5 years, it feels like there's obviously, I know you guys have been playing longer and have maybe a longer story in general, but just like, I do think there's just more, our pockets of density of play is just in different points, which is could just be interesting in general.
The Venn diagram covers like almost perfectly over the past 10 to 15 years weirdly well.
Yeah, it is strange. No, my fourth, I waffled between moving this one up higher or lower, but it's Morph. I think Morph is really
Yeah.
Morph is really
All right.
sick for limited. My experience with it is with Khans Tarkir, and again, it's my favorite limited format. So you can see, the little bias there. I think Morph is sick. Like in limited, it had this way of making games feel very similar early. Like most people just play a tap land, gain one, and then by turn 3 you're playing a morph. But then these late games would always become these intricate puzzles of like which morphs you knew about from the prior game. Especially in best 2 of 3. I don't know if in arena this would play as well in the single win format, but especially when you played 2 of 3, you're like, okay, I saw a Jeskai Wind Scout. Okay, that might be coming on turn 3, or I saw these 2 morphs. You know what I mean? And then it could be something else, and then there's this weird mini game that you could play with your opponent. Like he hasn't seen this one yet, so they might not suspect it. I like that in Khans Tarkir they had different morph costs. Some of them were like free, essentially. Like you could just reveal a card that was white and you could flip over Watcher of the Roost and gain 2 life and start hitting them in the air. Like very, again, it could be that my love of that particular mechanic is just only in that limited format, but I do find ways to put morph cards in the cube, or I try to put them in my EDH decks. Stratus Dancer's one. I know that's technically Mega Morph, but that's one that enters a lot of my EDH decks. What's the Den Protector makes it in a lot of my EDH decks. So yeah, I
Love Den Protector.
I love the morph mechanic. It's very cool. If I used it more, I think I would have put it a little higher. But yeah, I have great nostalgia for it. So that's what I have to say about morph, though. Love it.
Okay. Yeah, they've done so much with Morph because obviously stupid fucking Megamorph, the most annoying thing ever. I feel like that's the first joke that Magic has pulled on us as a player base. It's like, yo guys, what if we just did Morph but called it Megamorph? Like, it's unbelievable that came out as a printed keyworded mechanic.
Yeah,
It's Morph, but they come with a +1/+1
it
counter.
easily could have just been, yeah, it could have just been that.
Like, it's crazy that's what it did. It feels like a joke. It feels like an unset mechanic, right? Like you have Morph, and then in the unset they put in Megamorph. Like they did haste, and then what is it? Super haste, where it can like attack directly from your hand instead of in play. Like it literally sounds like a unglued or unhinged mechanic. It's ridiculous. But then they've done Disguise most recently, which is basically just Morph, but with what is it? It investigates when you turn a face up, or what is Disguise? Ward 2, and then they also did why can't I think of the word where you put the top card of your deck face down as a
Manifest.
morph creature?
Manifest. And
Manifest.
Manifest Dread is what they call it now.
And then Manifest Dread was also what they did more recently too. But yeah,
Kyle, shut the fuck
it's
up.
weird. I don't know. Okay.
So I want to say that Morph is one. I didn't put it on my list, but it's like I want to put it number 1 because my heart has it as my favorite like mechanic as like conceptually. And when I was playing at like when Morph was in Legions, the set it was first introduced, I was going to that pre-release. That was when I first had transitioned from what I'd say like my older brother played Magic to I play Magic. And like I did it for me and I was building my own deck. And Morph was the mechanic that meant like sparked my interest the most. So that's why to me I have this deep rooted love for it. Even though, and like, because I think it's also really fun to bluff. And like when I was younger, me and Kyle playing, I could do way more interesting stuff with Morph than I could with me and Kyle when he's 33, So it's not quite as, I don't know that I feel like I could pull off the power. I just also love that Morph is a paper mechanic. It is so much power in the bluffing. Granted, if you're playing at the high level competitiveness, it's not as, like, there's only like 1 or 2 good Morph cards in any environment. So, and like in EDH is probably a little bit different, but in like 60 card formats, it's like, I know what this is in this like area, but I don't know. I like in a mechanic that allows you to flex the interpersonal. I'm playing against another human in person. Always will, I think, be a more interesting mechanic than not.
Yeah, and I think fairly fondly of Morph because of Onslaught is the set.
Yeah, there's more from Onslaught.
It's in that block, yeah. I mean, I'm sorry. You're right. It did debut in Onslaught, not Legions. Legions does have Morph, but so does Onslaught.
Yeah. Soul Collector, I remember, is a card that you guys had. Either you had or Ryan did, or our brother. They had a pre-release version of this card, and I believe Matt Dorfler ended up with it somehow because when I visited him a couple years ago,
he totally does. That's the one. Yeah.
So yeah, like that's just a card that I don't really have memories of playing with it. I remember you specifically playing it, so I played against it, and there's just like nostalgia value for, like you say, Morph and Soul Collector pops in my head. And it's like not a mechanic I think fondly of specifically. Like I like Morph, it's cool. I've never cared for it too much, but like I have memories associated with Morph, and I remember playing Magic as a child with Soul Collector. Like, yeah, I don't know. Cool.
I think Disguise is Morph. A good updated version of Morph.
See, I don't even know what that is. What is Disguise?
So it's
this, literally Morph, but it has Ward 2.
Yeah, the face down creature also has Ward 2 in addition to all the normal Morph rules. It's just a buffed version. I just think, the name almost makes sense. Like, the Disguise can inherently make it harder to detect you, which is the Ward to counter spells. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, you can kind of... Whereas Megamorph is, like, the dumbest, like, name on the planet. That's my biggest beef, but yeah.
It's Megamorph.
It does look cute. Yeah. All right. Well, shout out to Morph. I think Disguise is cool. I hope to keep Morph mechanics around. I like sets that have them in there. It makes me happy when I see them try it again. I don't know. That's how I feel about the mechanic, and that's usually a good sign.
Well, they keep due with Manifest, and then Disguise, and then Manifest Dread, etc.
And Manifest Dread just sounds dope as hell, so that gets my approval.
Yeah, I don't know if I like, sentences as abilities, but whatever.
Yeah, but
here we are.
That's why you're a nerd and I'm cool.
Okay, so I'm going to go next.
Yeah, I think we're on to 3 now. No, wait, you're number 4. Holy crap.
Yeah, my number 4. Yeah, this might take a while. My number 4 is Ninjutsu.
Oh. I was wondering where it was going to be. Yeah. I was wondering where that was going to be.
Yeah, you knew it. You knew it was coming?
Oh, absolutely, Kyle. You skullduggery motherfucker over here loves Ninjutsu.
Dude, Ninjutsu was the first, I think it was the first ability that actually had me build an entire deck around it cohesively. Because when I started Magic when 5th Dawn came out, I didn't know how to play Magic. I was playing with super old cards, random, pile of crap kind of kitchen table Magic stuff. And then we got into Magic super hard in Kamigawa. I remember in the packs I opened a Kaiga, the Rising Star.
Yep.
And then the red one, the Falling Star. So I just vaguely made like a blue-red flying kind of deck with big dragons and stuff. It was terrible and didn't do anything, but just played the big rares that I pulled out of my packs. Then Betrayers came out. They had Ninjutsu. We opened Ink Eyes, Higure. I had full play sets of both. I made the most wicked ass fucking wicked, ass hyphen fucking deck.
Well, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. So yeah, it's Ninjutsu, Ink Eyes, Servant of Oni, Higure, the Still Wind.
Yep.
That's it. Some of my all-time favorite cards, and a card that we affectionately named Okiba Gangbang Shinobi, if you remember.
That. I still say that.
Yeah, me too. Gangbang Shinobi. So yeah, man, Ninjutsu was it was really cool, and it was, I mean, obviously, like I said, I had only started playing Magic fairly recently, but I dare say ninjutsu was one of the more like involved and kind of complex mechanics that they had ever printed. I mean, okay, banding, LOL, whatever, but like, I don't know. It something about ninjutsu. It's just maybe it's just that it's so weird compared to a lot of mechanics. Am I wrong
No,
for saying
ninjutsu is
that?
really weird, man. It's like
Yeah.
it plays with really weird timing. Like when you can attack with a creature, they can, or like let's say two creatures, they can like not block either. They can use your removal spell on one. You can ninjutsu the other, or like there's a lot of really weird timing with ninjutsu that's really cool. Yeah, it is definitely strange. Picking up a creature, you put this into play.
Okay.
It's just an activated ability. You're not casting it. Like there's a lot of weird things going on with
Yeah,
ninjutsu.
okay. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes, that kind of crystallized why it felt very strange to me because number one, they enter attacking, which means they don't trigger on attack abilities, which is like as a new player, there is so many rules wrapped up in ninjutsu that it was actually like it made you really need to be intimately familiar with Magic's rules in order to play ninjutsu correctly. Like I said, it doesn't trigger attacking abilities despite it entering attacking. So like that's already weird. Then you have to know how declaring attackers, declaring blockers, and then having the space between blockers and damage so that you can actually activate ninjutsu. Like you need to become super intimate with every single separate phase of combat. You need to know, like you said, that you're not casting a spell, so it can't be countered. You're activating an ability that puts the creature from your hand into play. Like, it's so weird.
And you can
there's
use
so much involved in
ninjutsu
it.
right at, like you can ninja a dude in and then ninja that dude out for another dude. Like you can it's ninjutsu's complicated.
Yeah, you're right. You could double ninjutsu. I don't know why you ever would, but
Yeah,
you
wow,
could.
I've never seen that before. No, there's in the most recent Kamigawa set,
Yeah.
aren't there ones that enter play and then do something?
Yeah, so one of them is straight up
they
when
enter and like give something indestructible. or
there's
something.
also one
Yeah.
that enters plays clones, but has the like ninjutsu ability still. There's one
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
and there's ones that make things have hexproof and like the most recent set of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty had a lot of complex stuff where that becomes relevant, and there's a lot with like when it and if it enters and is attacking, has some triggers. So like there's a ninja lord that makes anything all ninjas like ninjutsu abilities cost less, so you can make it cost like a colorless or a
Right, yep.
0 in some cases.
Yep, and then of course there's the infamous ninjutsu commander. What the hell is that guy called?
Yuriko,
It's a
the
girl.
Tiger Shadow. Commander Ninjutsu, the most fun ability they've ever made in Commander.
Dumbest thing they could have ever done. I hate that card. I remember when they first showed this card, I got excited, of course, because I'm a ninja boy, and I thought I would like it, and then I realized how, first of all, building around ninjutsu is also just incredibly unfun. You just eliminate combat as a like a way to interact with opponents, because the only way ninjutsu works is if your shit isn't blocked. So that means all you do is put in unblockable stuff. So just building around ninjutsu means you're building around the fact that you're just not planning on interacting with your opponents in combat, which is already super unfun. So like, if your opponents are playing Yuriko, they're just going to be attacking you with unblockable shit all game, and you might as well just like not play. You're going to be playing solitaire because you're not going to be able to interact with them. Like,
Yeah, if they would have
So-
made that taxed more, like her Commander Ninjutsu ability or some other way, they probably could have done it. But it just, the fact it's just blue black every
it's
time is
crazy.
ridiculous.
Yeah. 2 mana Commander Ninjutsu. She can die 6 trillion times and she will always cost 2 mana. I mean, it's so stupid. And of course her ability is insanely strong on top of everything. So yeah.
My favorite mechanic
an
is my
example
least
of-
favorite card.
I was thinking the same thing, Taylor.
Wait, say that again. What did you say?
My favorite mechanic is this. Here's my least favorite card. I just
Oh yeah, no. I mean, no, it's
funny.
I don't know. Yeah, ninjutsu was cool, of course, and as we said, we talked briefly before all of this saying that like a lot of the mechanics too have a ton of nostalgia wrapped up in them. I'm not saying ninjutsu was a good mechanic, but it taught me a lot about Magic. It made me become a better player because I had to know how my cards worked. I had to know how they interacted with other cards. But yeah, I don't know. And ninjas, it's just a concept. Of course, ninjas are fucking cool. I don't care how old you are or where you're from. Ninjas are fucking badass. They're just cool. So like having an entire faction in the game surrounding that ability is really cool. And now that Dimir over the years has leaned so heavily into like spell slinging and graveyard manipulation, you know, these ninjas being all about combat and attacking is very kind of off the shelf for what it has become. So, you know what I mean? Like as a color combination, attacking mechanics are not common in Dimir.
Yeah, they're leaning into that ninjas are like the identity of blue black, these quiet sneaker sneak into your house with plans. Which I'll be honest, I think is kind of cool, but because now it's making ninja and like because Kaito is like canonically like the one of the main guys now, and like one of his most recent appearances, you get an emblem that all ninjas get +1/+1. So there's gonna be a lot of support for ninjas and ninjutsu in the future, I think.
Yeah, that's true. They're bringing it back and they keep bringing it back. So yeah, you're right that that'll probably be a kind of a mainstay. So yeah, that was my number 4. Yeah, Taylor, number 3.
That's a good one. I have fond memories of that era of Magic, so hard not to. I just seeing the word ninjutsu in a card is just cool.
You played. Oh man, I was ninjas and you were green black Soul Shift.
Yeah,
that was our matchup.
Yeah,
Soul Shift was so
consuming
cool.
hunger,
and I remember
or
you
consuming greed. Yeah. I forget exactly.
Fuck, what's that card called? But yeah, you just like sacrifice as many creatures as you want, and your opponent loses 2 and you gain 2 for each creature you sacrifice. So you just like,
and it's for each spirit you sacrifice specifically, because then a lot of them had Soul Shift would then bring a lot of them back. But yeah, anyway,
yes.
So I put number 3 is actually a mechanic that I'd say it's also newer. A lot of mine are newer, I know, but hear me out. My number 2s and 1s aren't. But it is the pay now, play later. I love, so this is Foretell / plot. I like Foretell a lot more. But I just love I think Foretell is much more my speed than I like plot a lot though, but the paying 2 mana, set it into the exile zone, and then you can play it later. Adventure also goes in this, but adventure is actively what I have a special category for adventure. If we talk about any special mentions of how I feel about adventure, but I just really like the idea of you pay a little bit to set up a spell that you need to cast later. And it's just
which plot sort of did inversely. You like pay for the bulk of it up front, and then it's essentially free later.
And that to me is really fun because you can have just like really explosive turns set up, which is fun. But they're face up, so they're kind of like what are you going to do about it? I just think that's kind of a fun way to really differentiate. Just like mechanically, they're pretty similar, but feeling wise are much different. But I just kind of like the idea of having plot where you have to plan out your turns. I like the idea of like having this extra tool. Like, cause the ones I think about are the like the ones from Kaldheim. They'll be like scry 2, draw 2. Another one is a counter. Normally it's a cancel in your hand, but a counter spell if you foretell it. Stuff where like you're incentivized to set this up later. So like you try to find those like pockets of time where you are like pushing off the offense enough that you can set up really good defenses, so you can be like set up a pretty good turn and have your tools ready. I don't know. It feels like it's rewarding someone really like having control of the battlefield and planning out their turns, and I think that's cool. And to me, that's just an interesting mechanic instead of just like a combat ability thing. And I don't know why Foretell just really like is stuck in my head no clue why. It's weird.
I love that these abilities that I'm not anticipating having to talk about are coming up as favorites. It's pretty crazy.
And I think there is a little recency bias of I've been playing a lot more Magic with these cards, so I get to be a lot more familiar. Even like, even if I played a lot more EDH, there's just like not that many cards with this mechanic, and what I really like about modern Magic mechanics is that they seem almost too fiddly, but that makes them, if you dissect them one at a time, really interesting. How you just change one little piece from an old mechanic and it feels completely new. And I don't know. That stuff's really interesting. And I appreciate the game from a very like rules driven aspect. And I just think that, like, to me, Fortel sets up a very interesting gameplay. Like it incentivizes control decks without calling it out. I don't know. Just cool to me.
Yeah, it's Morph in the Exile.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah,
I was gonna
like,
say that exact same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've come to, at first I got annoyed when people say that because it is much different, but I think that invites a positive thing because Morph is cool. So if you want to say like it's like when someone says like, oh, it's Kicker but this, I'm like, yeah, but Kicker's good, so that's fine. Like
Right.
I like Kicker. So if you want to do, it's like I like iteration sometimes. Like sometimes being novel just for the sake of novel is not cool. Just like an iterative version of a thing you already have is a good idea. So I don't know. So this one's mainly just me rambling, but Fortel and the like pay a little bit now and play it later, discounted or free. I like that. Like that's slowing down the game too. It incentivizes you to not just dump your hand right away. Because when you put it in those zones, you can't play it right now. You have to wait, and sometimes waiting a turn will totally shift your plans. And like I don't know, anything that slows down the game, I'm a big fan of because I find that. I met someone in real life who hated Magic, and I said, why? And he said, it's because it's whoever plays the better creatures first, and top decks more creatures wins.
Wow, tell me you haven't played Magic without telling me you haven't.
Right,
really
and
played
I'm
Magic.
like, that's so interesting that they think that the way you play Magic is you dump all your cards as you draw them. So mechanics that kind of like incentivize you to not like, you can't play it now, you have to invest in it. Is more interesting, and I was like, it made me appreciate. I don't know. So the more I talk about it, it feels a lot more like philosophical than emotional. Why I like it,
Right.
but Fortel, it left an impression on me, so I really like it.
Yeah, it's funny the way you talk about mechanics, and it's similarly to how you talked about devotion, how you even like the sort of the spirit of the ability, where that is something that's literally never crossed my mind before. I have never once thought about the actual act of like having things being devoted to you, causing the god to be like active. Those concepts just aren't a thing to me. I see it as a mechanic to play the game. It's very like, surface level on paper for me. So yeah, it's interesting to hear how these abilities resonate with you so much more, I guess, emotionally or philosophically than they do for me. That's cool.
What I always highlight is
different.
what separates Magic from every other game that I think is really fun is the special sauce, and I think it's those special things that line up. Because if they don't line up, then it's just like a dumb fantasy throwaway universe, So, yeah, I've come to recognize that's what I really love with the newer stuff is it feels like they lean into that really hard, which is good for me, but,
Yeah, and then it still works for people like me who just read the ability and go like, okay, that's how that works. Interesting. I can see how that would work with this or how this synergizes with that. And it's just
also Kaldheim is one
the
of
same ability and
is a top 10 set of all
yeah.
time. I said it.
Yeah,
I think
fucking
I
love Kaldheim.
I like Kaldheim a lot too, Taylor. I agree with that. It's very thematic, very cool. Snow's back. Oh, so good.
Oh, Snow Basics.
Kaldheim is the modern Champs of Kamigawa, where it's
interesting.
like super low power, and people generally did not like the set because it didn't add much to any format. But thematically, it like blew my ass out of my ass.
Ooh.
How do you say? What's the phrases?
Blew my ass.
Knocked it out of the park, blew it out of the water.
Yeah.
Yes, there we go. We got there. So, yeah, that's how I view Kaldheim. It's like the modern day.
Well,
champions are coming out.
I don't know if you know this, but I actually foretold that right now is when I would ask Carver what his next was. That was a good segue.
It was a great segue. So
I got
this is so I don't have a ton of experience with it, but I just love just about every single card that I see with this ability. It's not used a lot, but Evoke.
Yes, that was on my list before I cut it down. Yes.
Every single card I see with Evoke, I'm just like, and I don't have like a specific nostalgia for it, except like Modern Horizons 2, playing a bunch of the bounce one, Aether. I can't remember his name, but it's the blue that
Aether
Snipe. Yeah. Playing a lot of him, playing a lot of Spite Bellows. I like Ingot Chewer, Wismare. All these cards, like they don't do this ability a lot, but I love it. And then again, not having played with these, but just knowing that I love their designs, the Evoke free ones that they've made recently, that Fury, that are just unbelievably powerful, very cool. Yeah, I think Evoke is very strong. I love the idea of you being able to pay a tiny bit of mana to get a meaningful effect, or you can just pay almost a reasonable amount of mana to get the creature with the effect. Yeah, I think it's well balanced, keeps you with a lot of options through games. Yeah, I love Evoke. Very good.
Yeah, dude, I absolutely love Evoke. The reason why I ended up not adding it to my list was because I did feel that if you don't evoke a creature, or at least have a way to circumvent the downside of Evoke, the cards themselves are never that strong, right? Like, other than the Modern Horizons ones, you know, Fury and Grief and whatever, that are just like crazy. But yeah, like Ingot Chewer, who the hell is ever paying 5 mana for that? Like, that, it sucks.
I guess
you know, like even Muldrifter. If you're not evoking Muldrifter, it's like it can be.
No one's casting Shriek Maw for its converted mana cost.
Yeah, exactly. It's like no one's paying 5 for that.
See, I don't know.
So I ended up
That's
cutting
interesting.
it.
I don't know. That's certainly an option, though, right? Like, see again.
Yeah, but no, it's what makes it cool is that you can if you want to. It's like you have nothing else. 5 mana. I'd rather play Shriekmaw than just a murder or whatever your equivalent kill spell is. That's what makes it's interesting when you break down Evoke. It kind of feels like what if a creature was the kicker cost?
Like, yeah, sacrifice. Yeah.
If you don't like paying kicker, instead it becomes a creature spell instead of a. I mean, it's not quite the same, but if you want to be really reductive, I'm clever boy over here.
No, that is kind of
right.
a weird way to look at it. Totally, for sure. Yeah,
because the other thing that's awesome about the way Evoke is designed is that flickers work. Like, you can get it before it dies. It's sacrifice trigger on the stack.
Yes.
I'll flicker it, and like I don't know, that's a weird interaction. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, Muldrifter Momentary Blink was like one of my favorite combos ever. Just like draw 4 for 5 mana and get a 2/2 flyer in play. Like, it was so cool. Yeah, man, I love Momentary Blink. For foreshadowing in the future of a shout out of mine, an honorable mention.
The only thoughts I'm going to add to Evoke is that I think the creatures who have the Evoke keyword are more interesting than the ability is to me, because they're always these like weird ethereal elemental creatures. So I like that.
Yeah, always elementals.
I think Evoke is like just really cool. That one, I don't have any emotional attachment to any Evoke card except Muldrifter, who I have a very fond love for. But other than that, Evoke feels like a crowd pleaser. Like it won't rustle any feathers. Like, it's just a solid, cool
it's just good. And I also really, really love. It's an ability that, like we've been talking about, there's ways to get around the downside, which you don't really consider as a newer player or as somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience with Evoke. You don't realize, like, oh, with their enter the battlefield on the stack, you can do something with the creature before it's sacrificed. Interesting. So you could, like, for instance, like a Orzhov Death and Taxes deck, you could evoke your Shriekmaw and then sacrifice it to a different effect, like a, Phyrexian Altar or something, to get mana from it and the effect. And, like, yeah, there's a lot of cool interactions with Evoke. I also like it because there's a lot of strong evoke cards in the Pauper format, which we play a decent amount of, right? Like Shriekmaw is great in Pauper, and Muldrifter is great. Ingot Chewer, like all classics, and we see them frequently in our decks. Like really, really good. I really like Evoke. It was on, like I said, it was on my list before I was able to narrowly shave it off. But yeah, I really, really love Evoke. And it was reminds me of an era of Magic that I absolutely love too. Lorwyn was just like, prime era Magic. That's what was between like Ravnica and
the Lorwyn block.
Zendikar.
The year of Lorwyn, the greatest year of Magic of all time. Oh, who said that? The truth said it.
Yeah, I'm looking at these. I'm looking at this art, man, for all these evoke creatures. Oh my gosh, so wonderful.
Yeah, see, I wasn't even
so
exaggerating.
They are
They actually.
No, they're really, really
They're
phenomenal.
single
so
one is
like
cool.
a mixture of gross and at times and beautiful at others. It's fiendish, but they're all
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. No, they really are superb art. Is it my turn?
Yes,
I can't
sir.
remember the order that we've been doing this.
You're
Okay.
number 3.
My mechanic, which I think is Taylor's favorite worded mechanic. And that is Annihilator.
No, it's not. But damn, that's good.
It's not?
No.
Dude, how is Annihilator
Because
not like
do you want me to unveil it?
Magic? It's
I-
so
Wait.
good. No,
wait.
no. We'll get
I have a
there.
guess
Okay.
too. We can wait till later.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but
Yeah.
Annihilator,
Yeah, we will.
honestly, Kyle,
I just blew my
That
guess.
was I was going oscillating between those two. Annihilator probably is realistically my favorite word, but it isn't what I was thinking of. But anyway, continue.
Okay, so that's my guess. So Annihilator, this is the key. This one I was a little iffy on adding because I do not think it's necessarily the best ability. I think it is like absurdly powerful, really oppressive. I don't know if there's ever a way to balance it. I guess their way to balance it was to put it on creatures that are like minimum 7 mana or greater, so like you feel powerful. But part of why this keyword, this ability, is one of my favorites is obviously nostalgia. I bought more boxes and played more Magic during the Zendikar era than probably in the history of me playing this game. Like, I had so much Zendikar and I played so much of it. Like, I had play sets of every single one of the Eldrazi lords.
Yeah,
you know?
and
Like,
that's
I
just
had
from packs
all the Ulamog's and
openings alone.
Kozileks. Yeah, I remember I opened a foil Kozilek, and Carver traded it to somebody for cash and brought me $100 fucking cash for a foil Kozilek when I was like, 20 something years old way back then.
Look, every Magic player has that story, right? Why did I sell this card for cash then and not
no,
now?
that's not what I'm saying.
Damn it. Well, that is your story.
I got $100 cash. It's worth like $100 now. Like you couldn't sell that for $100 cash. I sold it like when it was, it had been a couple years, so of course all Magic cards, gain tons of value over time, but no, I remember Carver and I would do business through the gas station because that's when I worked at BP. I remember I traded Carver my Remands and my Lightning Helixes.
Yes.
He bought a playset of each for like $40
Yeah.
from me. And then I remember I gave you the foil Kozilek for you to go back to bring to your buddy down in Champaign. That's when you were still in college back then. And then, a couple weeks later you'd show up. You're like, hey, I sold your Kozilek. Hand me $100 cash. It's like, holy shit. It was so fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, Annihilator, crazy powerful ability. They had absolutely never printed cards with this level of power in the history of Magic, not even by a little bit, by fucking miles. We had never seen something like Emrakul. We had never seen something like Kozilek, the Butcher of Truth. These colorless exclusive creatures that have fucking 12 printed power toughness that annihilate 4 permanents on attack. Like, mind-blowing power these things have. And it's like immediately I had to make decks around them. I had to use them. So I ended up with a mono green ramp deck that actually worked really, really well, using like Kozilek Conscriptor and shit like that. Kozilek's Praetor. What's it called? Kozilek's
Yeah.
Predator. Yeah, like turn 2, you play a nesting something. I can't remember. It would make one of those little
Nesting
tokens. And then turn 3, you'd play the.
I thought
What is it?
Scion, maybe that's wrong, or Drone.
Nesting Scion? I don't think so. Anyways, Annihilator, man. Printed on the most powerful creatures, and it's probably the single most powerful ability in the game. I don't know, maybe other than like Hexproof. Hexproof is pretty crazy strong.
No, Annihilator's
Indestructible strong
stronger
too,
because
but
it kills
I think it
Annihilator,
is.
or it kills Hexproof and indestructible creatures.
You're right. They have to sacrifice the stuff. Yeah, no. So anyways, Annihilator, just one of them. Yeah, just like almost leaves me speechless with the cards that have Annihilator.
My
Love
only thoughts on it is this is probably the closest to the feeling I was describing before to you of like this. These cards felt like they were freakishly powerful. Like reading them and
Yeah.
you'd be like, "Is this a legal card?" I remember reading them and be like, "This
what?
What's the hell?" Like, but we were actually correct, not in the like I'm 10 years old and thinks a colossal dreadmaw is unbelievably powerful, but like it. Those reading that and it being blown away and like this scale of it, and to me that's one of the reasons that I think it is objectively one of the meanest and most unfair, stupid. They should never print it, but they did it to make you feel how powerful these things were, and I think that's an interesting aspect because like think about it as a gameplay mechanic. Like fuck this, dude.
That's what I was.
Yeah.
That's why.
So
that's what I was saying when I started all this. Like, I know it's not a fair ability or balanced
or fun to play against too. That's wild.
It's not. But like somebody slams a Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, and you or an Emrakul, you can't help but go like, holy shit. That's badass.
This is like
okay. Yep.
That's like a moment you want to bottle to like relive. Is the first time someone like plays like Emrakul against you when you didn't know that card existed. Like it kind of breaks your brain of like, what is this game's scale? I didn't realize cards got this powerful. Mana costs got this high, and I don't know that like there's something special about a mechanic that abilities got this powerful. I don't know. It's kind of just like a cool. Here's the Richter scale. This is the devastation. These are weapons of mass destruction level of a scale. But that it would be bad for a game, but a game this big, you almost want that as like a fun thing for the players of it to like, I don't know, almost circle around to hate a little bit.
It's a limit, right? Like it's literally like you were saying, Kyle, the upper echelon limit of power in Magic. And so they're always immense and powerful. I will say, I don't think in all my cubing or all my games of Magic, I don't think I've survived many Annihilator triggers. So it's interesting, like from a gameplay perspective, where it's just like, it's kind of like ends the game. You know what I mean? In a way, it
does.
So it's really interesting that you pick this ability. Mostly, it seems for like all the feeling you get from it. Yet you talked about how analytical you.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, it's analytical until it isn't.
Yeah, until I slam this Kozilek that you
Right.
just can't win because I just drew 4 cards
Yeah,
and I'm attacking you.
No, no, you're right. It's like instead of playing a 5/5 flyer where you go like, oh, I'm on a 4-turn clock. How do I respond to this? It's like, oh, you played Kozilek. I have to win on my turn or I lose. Like, they're almost all 1-turn clocks because even if you can survive, let's say, 1 attack from a Kozilek, you have sacrificed 4 permanents and you're trying to stop a 12/12. Like, even if you're at 20 life. With like 8 permanents in play, 12 permanents in play, you have to sacrifice 4 of them, and you take 12 down to 8.
Or you blocked
just
the creature and lost a 5th permanent. Like it's,
yeah, exactly. You just don't survive it, like you said. Yeah, Annihilator is. It is interesting that almost no matter what number Annihilator is, you just lose to it. Maybe Annihilator 1 is manageable, but there's only one creature that has Annihilator 1 that I'm aware of. That was probably the worst of the Eldrazi. Anyways, yeah, like Annihilator 2, just 2. You sacrificing 2 permanents on their attack. They don't even have to hit you with damage. They don't have to kill a creature. They attack you, and you instantly have to sacrifice stuff. I mean, yeah, it's just brutal. It's game over. Which is crazy that Ulamog's Crusher exists. An 8 mana, 8/8 Annihilator 2. Love that card. Pauper, staple. if you need a big game-ending finisher in your deck, you just play Ulamog's Crusher.
Yeah,
That's all there is to it.
I guess I
so
survived
cool.
that Annihilator trigger. I guess I was because in Pauper with an EDH general, the format we Pauper EDH, you have the general to cast over and over. You can kind of stem it a
Yeah.
little bit. You can stem
Circumvent it with that, and then there's like tokens and shit, and because Ulamog has to attack, sometimes if you're lucky, you actually have something bigger than an 8/8, so you can block the Crusher and kill it. Yeah, or like some little stinky Death Toucher guy that just gets rid of it. So yeah, but they're just brutal cards, and they leave you. I will say, they did an amazing job of leaving you in awe. Like, you are, as a player, in awe of these cards when they're played, and that is exactly like what they're supposed to do. You're supposed to, your jaw drops and you go, oh my fucking god. Like, this eldritch being from another dimension that's the size of a skyscraper, like, is here and killing me, annihilating me. It's just so cool.
Like,
I love
even if you kill it, you still are just like the citizens. Like,
you've been left in ruins.
Yeah,
you're like,
but then,
at what cost?
But this isn't a flavor 100% mechanic, and I think it's really interesting.
It's just that's the words I was looking for. It's an absolute flavor slam dunk.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't think you'd do that, but all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So Annihilator. I never in a million years would have pegged that for you. Now, Kyle, what mechanic is it that you thought you could predict on my list that's either number 2 or number 1? And I want to see if you think it's number 2 or number 1. I want you to...
I think I might have been... because like you said, you've played more Magic in the last couple of years than ever before, so I don't really necessarily know your taste anymore. But if we had a time capsule and like we did this back in 2014, I think your number 1 is Exalted.
Yeah, I know. I was waiting for you to say that.
Yeah.
So
was that right?
It is not on my list anymore, but that is the one I assumed you thought it was. But
yeah,
it is something that I think Exalted creatures would love. Do you have a guess, or should I just say it?
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Crew.
What?
Vehicles?
Wow. Vehicles.
I didn't think that'd be that controversial. I thought vehicles were I fucking love vehicles. It was either vehicles or sagas were the two here, and I felt sagas were too much like enchantments, whereas vehicles feel like there's a bit more going on. So I put vehicles here instead. So,
wow. Okay.
Think of every dirtly little guy that you want in play that can't do anything in combat because your opponent has junk. What if they can be used as a resource to activate an artifact that can get played way earlier and is way more powerful than it should be as a looming threat to your opponent? So now everything that you're doing is now you have to side eye and be like, well, how important is this vehicle? And like, I guess I'm thinking this is more like the Kaladesh vehicles. Those are really, really powerful, right?
Yeah, they're good.
And then
like Heart of Kyrian.
What my love for vehicles is actually the Kaladesh ones. In particular, these really low-powered, rinky-dink like little things, and then also Essica's Chariot, probably the most insane things. But I just love. I talk about it, even though most of the mechanics aren't really stemming around it, but like on the board magic, where we have creatures with varying powers and abilities that are like working together, synergizing. Graft was like one of my favorite, like Green Blue Simic was the guild that really spoke to me back in the day. But so turning all of your guys that are sitting back and can't do anything to be able to turn on vehicles, and a lot of vehicles have just cool, fun abilities, and I think that they're just... I can't find the right words to express why I like them as much as I do, other than like I just love that they exist and is like a new artifact type that I think is really cool and really interesting. They can do fun stuff with it, and I like the idea that it allows creatures to attack without attacking. Because a lot of times the vehicles will take some people down, and like losing the vehicle is usually not as bad as losing the creature. It allows for, I don't know. I just think vehicles are really fun and really interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, okay, so your theme is definitely kind of like heads up, everything in play, magic. I don't like vehicles strictly because of Smuggler's
Oh, get
Copter.
over it. Come on.
Yeah, you nerd.
Yeah, no, okay, yeah, no, true, fair.
And I think,
But
well, I will say that there
so
are
funny.
the problem with vehicles is I think Kaladesh printed some really like Grease Fang with Perhelion 2. I think is Perhelion 2 the angel making
Yeah.
one.
Unbelievable. Really good.
And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
so
yeah.
that plus Smuggler's Copter, but I think there are the bad vehicles are really bad, but like I love vehicles as a limited player too. I find vehicles are a really good limited mechanic because you just have a bunch of little dorky guys who can't do anything. A lot of like combat is like 2 2s and 3 3s holding down the fort, and having 1 4 4 vehicle just puts enough pressure to make some damage. And like I don't know, it breaks stalemates because losing an artifact and their 2 creatures puts you way ahead, and like I don't know, that makes the game end. Sometimes the problem with like Annihilator is that it makes the game slower, but not in a like let's strategically play this game out. It's like no, you're stopping the game from ending. Annihilator can kind of like open a window to make you win, but it doesn't make the game end faster. I think usually vehicles are used to design.
You're
to
full
help.
of shit. Annihilator doesn't make the game end faster. What are you talking about?
I just said I took it back a little bit, but I'm saying it doesn't actively like kill your opponent. So that's what like it can make games feel longer. Granted, most of the creatures with Annihilator are so big, so it's a bad example. All right, I'll take the
It is
L
a
on
very
it.
bad example.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, that's horrible.
but
That doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. I think vehicles are cool. I think the design space on the vehicles are really good in Kaldheim, which made me really excited. They work really well with some newer mechanics. I know that no one likes modern Magic, but Survivor is a mechanic that like interfaced really well, and I just love the idea of being able to use the guys that you don't want to lose, but you want to have them be useful. It's a resource that it gets added into the game that doesn't feel unfair the way that like energy isn't a broken resource that they just can't balance. But like using your guys' power to do stuff, even if the stuff isn't that exciting, is cool. And I like that.
No, I agree. I like the concept of taking, because here's the thing, is like part of a resource in Magic is having something tapped or untapped. So turning, I'll use Smuggler's Copter as an example. It's a 3/3 flyer that crews for 1. So in essence, you're thinking to yourself, well, you're just taking a 1/1 and like turning it into a 3/3 flyer. It seems kind of, too easy or unfair, but you have to tap the creature to crew it. So you are losing something. You're losing the resource of having a blocker, having a bluff, having an attack with a combat trick, something, like you do lose something from crewing. But usually, your shit crews up, right? Like you get a 7 power thing, but you got to crew it with 5 power. So it's kind of like a weird little level up mechanic, which by the way is my number 1. Spoiler alert, JK.
Damn it! I was so excited for a second.
I just think the problem with crew was that they missed the mark so much, because I think it's almost a mechanic that it's almost like too weird and too good for even the designers to really understand, because the only cards I really remember that have crew were, of course, Smuggler's Copter, which was just like super notorious and got banned in Standard at the time. And I was playing Standard like heavy, so I was dealing with fucking copters constantly. I hated this card. And then they tried to make a more balanced version in Heart of Kiran, which ended up being equally as busted because it has vigilance and flying as a 4/4, and like you just can't deal with the thing. So I just feel like they missed a lot with crew, and by the time they finally got it right, which is in the more recent sets, like they had already had 2 or 3 sets with this mechanic and nobody really liked it. They either had, unusably bad vehicles, or they were like busted, infuriating good, like Copter and Kiran. So yeah, I feel like it's a mechanic that had potential, maybe still has, but I think it just like lost the interest of people.
Well, I think
but maybe I'm speaking with too broad of a stroke.
I don't know. Well, it's your stroke. I think that I think vehicles are awesome. I considered it. I played a lot of Kaladesh Draft. Again, back to the draft format. Skyskiff, amazing.
Yeah.
Unlicensed Hearse, which I think is, or
Love
not,
it.
no, not Unlicensed Hearse. Untethered Express is the one from, I think, Aether Revolt, another limited all star. Vehicles
Oh
are
yeah,
probably one
yeah.
of the more recent thing. Well, I guess Kaladesh is however old now, but one of the newer mechanics that really makes me think about board states when I'm playing limited. So if you have like one blocker and a vehicle, your opponent like that could block your opponent. It's really hard for them to like use a removal spell to take you out of combat. Like you can crew the vehicle in response. To them killing your creature. Now you still have the vehicle creature. Like there's a lot of little weird things that happen. They can try to force you to attack, but
Yeah.
you can tap your creatures in response to crew a vehicle that's already been tapped or crewed. Like so, there's a lot of like little corner game mechanics
You can use
surrounding around
it like
vehicles that I just think are so cool.
get around edict effects.
Yep. Yes, those types of things. There's so many little things about vehicles that I just find, if you just play your standard, creatures and spells, magic, you're not getting that. You know what I mean? You're gonna miss out on some of these little synergies or intricacies that I just appreciate so much. And then I agree with you, Kyle, too, that the vehicles are a way that you like level up the power and toughness, or what Taylor you said earlier, where all the little guys can kind of pile into a crew 4 vehicle, and now you're attacking with a 6/6. It definitely there's a lot of examples of that too. I think vehicles are really strong. Yeah, I considered it, but I don't know why exactly I left it off. But I definitely have a lot of fine memories of playing Kaladesh Limited, and vehicles were a part of that. So yeah,
And the vehicle suites
very-
in the new Kamigawa were really good. Like Reckoner Bankbuster was an awesome card draw engine
that guy.
that made itself crewable and then it became just like a good free body. So yeah. Anyway, you were saying something.
I was just saying it is a very weird mechanic and it's very interesting. So it gets a lot of points for that.
And the last thing I'll say,
I just don't know why they've just never jived with me. Vehicles, I've just never really cared for them too much. But
the one thing I'll say, as weird as it sounds, the concept of a vehicle getting its own card type really opens all of the design space for vehicles or for cards in their different universes of what does this universe's vehicles look like? In Neon Dynasty, it allowed for all of the mech that they were piloting. Instead of just being another creature, it is now a mechanically unique thing. And being able to delineate those parts of the universes, it's kind of unique cards that you can design. You can think of what does a horror movie vehicle look like, and now you have a whole bunch of ideas for cards. I don't know, it's a weird minor inside baseball bonus, but I think that's kind of a weird way to look at it. So, all right, Carver.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm too insightful for my own good. It's fine. Carver, what is your number two?
well, think about the Transformers too. You know what I mean? Now we get.
Yeah, how are they going to come up with Transformers without being
bring
true?
those in
Okay.
cleanly. Perfect.
No, this one's a little boring, but I love these cards, all of them that you can play flashback. It might be
Okay.
just too bland of an ability because it's kind of just ubiquitous in Magic, or maybe not ubiquitous, but it's definitely been over time in Magic. Been made a lot of different versions of cards.
Yeah.
These cards are great. Like all the time, every time I see one of these cards, you just get extra value from them. There's obviously, deep analysis is probably one of my favorites. Just super amounts of card draw spread across a couple of different turns, similar to Morph, similar to Foretell, where you get this segmented value from cards. It plays with graveyard, so if you can play with discarding effects. You can discard the card flashback and just use the back half. I know that was common with Lingering Souls. You could just pay the cheap version of getting 2 spirits. So yeah, there's just so much to say about how good flashback is, just from a consistency standpoint, and I like the games that it's involved in. So that's all I have to say about that.
No, Flashback, again, was one that I considered initially. It is super cool. Like you said, there's just so much you can do with it. It's just so... I don't know. And I'm looking at it now. There are 195 cards with flashback, so it is a super evergreen, like gonna be around forever kind of keyword. And they've printed so many in all the different colors and a lot in different color combinations. So you could conceivably put flashback cards in any given color combination deck and make something work. Yeah, I love flashback. In what's going to be my number 2 favorite mechanic, flashback works perfectly with it, beautifully with it, actually. But
We can
won't
only
go
guess.
there
Yeah.
yet. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, just for example, Innistrad Midnight Hunt, which was, I think, October or fall of 22, 21, was the first set to have multicolor flashback costs. So,
Whoa,
like,
really?
there's still so much space.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was the first set to have the gold. Look it up. All of the multicolored ones are Midnight Hunt or newer.
Wow. That's
So, like, they really haven't, like, milked it dry either. I find it hard because what's also nice about flashback, there's a way to play around it. Once again, is someone can snipe that extra value from you with a graveyard interaction. So I like that the extra benefit to like kind of keep it balanced is that it is very interactable and heads up. It also gives extra value to cards that like return things from the yard back to your hand or stuff like a spell of a card or decks that care about like casting a certain number of spells. One card being able to cast 2 spells could be relevant. Yeah, I love flashback. It feels good. It just feels good that you draw a card. You have 2 spells with it, especially with draw.
Something I really, really liked about flashback 2 was that it felt like the front half of flashback cards were never overcosted either.
right. I agree.
Like,
Yep.
like it's not like Evoke you mentioned before is sort of inverted where if you are going to play the card just heads up, it's usually crazy overcosted for what it does, and it kind of hurts to play it like that. So you're almost incentivized to use Evoke, where flashback is almost the opposite. It's just a pure upside. It's like, I'm going to play a card like this anyway, and then I also get to play it later for more, a more expensive cost. Or in the case of Deep Analysis, it's inverted, which is why the ability is so fucking cool, where it's like, you can pay 4 to draw 2, or if you get this into your graveyard, it only costs 2 mana first. Like, yeah, flashback is just so cool, and it never felt like the cards were hindered because of having flashback. It just felt like pure upside. And flashback.
Yeah, some of the
is
cool
awesome.
ones too,
Love it.
like lava darts, sacrificing a mountain as its cost, very cool.
Oh,
Obviously,
yeah.
dread return,
True.
unbelievable. Like sacrificing 3 creatures, all the synergy and shit you
Yes.
can do with that. But yeah, you're right. The front
Yes.
halves never feel that bad. Lingering Souls again for 3 mana, getting 2 1/1 spirits is totally fine. Like Spectral Procession was, you had to pay 3 white specifically to get 3. It just all feels very
Yeah.
in line with that. You know what I mean? So. Yeah, I love it. Some of the newer ones too. Kaleidoscorch, that was a recent Cube edition with Converge and Flashback. I know Converge, different thing, but yeah, just there's a lot.
Oh,
There's a lot of really
yeah.
cool ways to do it. I did not
Damn.
realize that they didn't play around with the multicolored flashback cost.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
You think it's crazy how much you think that like the history you just don't remember quite right because like I remember when they said that as they were unveiling it, I was like, "There's no way that's true." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess it is." It feels like it's always been
Yep.
there, and I think it's partially because in the past it's been like one card's been one color, and the other card, a flashback cost might have been the other color, but never like the flashback cost is both colors.
Yeah.
I think is the like caveat of like why it kind of is true and isn't, but yeah, and I like you guys said, they've always pushed flashback to be like there's always a standard equivalent. It's just the upside is you can cast it again, so you should put it in your deck. And because you start having flashback cards in your deck, you would play it a little bit differently than like if you would play just like whatever the 4 mana sorcery, draw 2 cards. Like that's way different than one that has flashback. It's boring but good. I think that's like a one that every time you hear that flashbacks back, like yeah, that's good. I like to hear that. That makes it.
Yeah, that's how it is with cycling too. It's like I'm never I'm never upset when I hear that cycling came back.
I'm more annoyed
Flashback,
that it
yeah.
not just like baked into like something in every set. Like the triomes in the new Capenna set, like the new tri lands, like just having
Yeah.
cycling, but they're the only cards to do that. I was like, yeah, just do that more often. Make it like a weird
Yeah.
random cycle. Have, no pun intended, cycling as a sub ability. It doesn't need to be explained. It just is a. Should have been in the base game. Richard Garfield is an idiot
Yeah, that's
for
true.
not having cycling in alpha.
All
All right,
right, moving on to me,
Yeah.
number 2, mechanic. Works perfectly with flashback, and that mechanic is dredge.
Oh, Kyle.
Dredge, despite it being one of my all-time favorite mechanics, there's only 16 cards that have dredge, which is really crazy because it feels like it's a mechanic that's been around forever. I mean, there's top tier modern decks that are dredge because just the handful of cards that they've made that have dredge are so powerful and impactful that you can still build around them and they're still used. So that it's weird. It was weird reconciling that, like, oh yeah, there's barely any dredge cards despite it being played everywhere, and since it's been printed, it's been played. It's kind of strange, but dredge, yeah, I love using the graveyard. I love that cards being in the graveyard doesn't mean that they're gone. It's just a different place that you got to draw from. I like how dredge is self-fueling. You use dredge to get a card back, and if that dredge hits a different dredge card, you can then dredge that card back. And it's just like it turns self-milling into a new resource. It turns the cards in your library into a new almost life pool. Like, can you afford to dredge your Stinkweed Imp for the 4th time in this limited format? Like, are you going to have enough cards to get this thing back again? It's like, is it worth it if you only have 4 cards left? I love dredge. It synergizes with so many mechanics. And it synergizes with escape, Taylor mentioned earlier. It synergizes with flashback. It synergizes with my number 1 mechanic that I will reveal when the time
I
comes.
will reveal that when the time comes because I already know what it is.
I'm sure you fucking will. I know. It synergizes with Delirium that Taylor brought up earlier. Or
Taylor.
Who the fuck said it?
It was Taylor.
I thought so. I thought it was Taylor. So, yeah, I don't know. Dredge, it's really cool. And as you said, Taylor, too, it turns, like targeted graveyard removal into a new... it levels up the power. Like as I'm about to dredge something, you can just remove it from the graveyard, and then I don't have the choice anymore. It's powerful, but it is certainly not uninteractable. I just love it.
I don't know how a mechanic that allows you to mill your deck for free and gain card advantage for free is overpowered. I don't know how they didn't make more of this.
It's funny because you say that, but like that actually sounds like a bad deal. It's like, wait, I gotta mill my cards, and then like the card has to be in my graveyard first, and then I have to mill my own cards to get it back. Like, it sounds like it should be bad, but it just isn't. And it's like Delve, where they've never been able to get the numbers right, because if the numbers are too high, it's actually fucking better for you, because you mill more into your graveyard and you turn on more synergies. For instance, like Delve. It's like, but then if the dredge is too little, it's like, wait, you're telling me you mill 1 card to get this thing back from your graveyard? Like, that's bullshit. So dredge is just... And it also explains why they've only made 16 cards, which were, at the time in Ravnica. It's the only ones.
It's funny basically. To me. I've always seen escape as fixed dredge. Because you
for sure.
It's like, imagine instead of putting into your graveyard, you had to exile the top cards of your library. Would people be?
Oh yeah,
that's basically what
totally different,
and that's what more or less like. So, my only beef with dredge is that like it's too broken to be interesting for me because you cannot stop the card, and the card itself in the decks. Well,
dredge goes on the stack, so then you just exile the thing that's about to trigger the dredge.
That's not okay. Fine. What I'm getting at is like it is the resource it uses gets better the more you use the trigger. Right, like the more you use escape, the harder, the more damage I feel. But the more you use dredge in decks that want dredge mechanics, It's like, yes,
Yeah,
good.
they're like inversely proportional,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you dredge into a new dredge card, so then that lets you dredge more. It's like a
So that's my beef
exponential.
with Annihilator. To me, it feels balanced in that, like, all right, look, you got to 8 mana with, and I can kill the one creature. You got your Annihilator out. But for me, Dredge is like, if I kill it, that's what you want. So now I don't want to kill it. Like, oh, okay.
Dude, that's why I love the graveyard. My creature's in play, you got to deal with it. But then if you kill it, I get it anyway. It's like, it's
So
just
as
puts your
someone who's
opponent
had to
into
play
lose-lose
against it for
situation.
20 years, fuck Dredge, fuck black, fuck
Yeah.
green. So that's my feelings about Dredge. I normally I like all the other, like, I think Unearth, unrelated to say I'm bringing up Unearth right now, is that I think Unearth fucking rules. My problem with Dredge is my big problem is that it doesn't have the safety release on it. It just is it makes itself stronger when you use it, when it itself is a net for the deck. So that's all I'll say. I respect you, Dredge, but you can go and get.
I also would like to say that at the time it was printed in Ravnica, it wasn't so oppressive. I mean, we didn't play Standard at the time, so maybe I'm misremembering the time, and
it was fine when me and you were playing against each other. It felt totally fine.
Like Kitchen Table Magic, it really was like, okay, I have to decide, do I want to get this Shambling Shell back or not? Like, then I have to pay 3 mana, and it's just a 3/1, and it makes a counter maybe, and of course, that was back when damage was on the stack, so Shambling Shell was very fucking good. You block, damage on the stack, sack it, put the counter on something, next turn, draw the card. Like, it was just pure win-win. But, I just have such fond memories of it, and it didn't feel overpowered at the time because we played decks that just, we made them ourselves, and they weren't inherently that strong. I remember your Boros deck running me over plenty of times, and...
Yeah, I have no problem with the mechanic in a Standard sense, but it's a cat's out of the bag. I will never have an environment in which that is true of that mechanic. No one I know is playing Kitchen Top Magic with 60 cards from the it's just
right.
As an adult, I just don't get to experience that anymore. So
no, but where I do play Dredge still is also in EDH, where another format where it isn't inherently that busted because there's so few sources of Dredge that, Stinkweed Imp is super annoying in an EDH deck because if you kill it, I have 100 cards to Dredge now, not just 60 or 40 or whatever. So it's going to be even harder for my library to actually be a consideration now because I essentially, it's just essentially infinite. But I only have the one Stinkweed Imp. I'm not going to dredge into more of them or dredge into, a Shambling Shell. It's so the way I play with Dredge and have always played with Dredge, it's felt fairly balanced to me.
See, I have a couple problems with Dredge. The first problem.
Oh,
yes!
I'm the turd in the punch bowl. The first problem I have with Dredge is that replacing the draw, remove when it's in your graveyard. I know you have to work to get in the graveyard, but it removes the possibility of you drawing a land, and so it makes your draws a little more fixed. And so that it already is a strong ability. The I guess what I'm saying, Dredge is all upside. Once it's in your graveyard, if it is Stinkweed Imp, you dredge 5, you might get some flashback cards in your graveyard, you might get a creature you want to reanimate in your graveyard, you get Stinkweed Imp in your hand, you're not drawing a land, you play Stinkweed Imp. It just it's a very consistent strong ability. I view that as more of a problem than a benefit. I don't know if maybe it puts me in a weird minority there where it just keeps coming back, and Stinkweed having Death Touch too is extra annoying. And then the other thing is that which is kind of mentioned already, but the fact that Dredge to me is essentially drawing you, if your deck is set up right, a bunch of cards into your graveyard without having to do anything. So it's so to me, it's just very, very powerful. Especially Cedrus, we've mentioned a million times. Stinkweed, I don't even know if Stinkweed is necessarily in Cedrus right now, but dredging 5.
It's not, no.
So maybe I'm killing my own point with this, but dredging 5 in that deck is just, it seems like it wouldn't be a bad card in that deck, you know what I mean? And a lot of times you probably would like to see it. But I don't know. Dredge is a good ability. It's really strong. I don't know. So I wonder if part of the reason why they can't balance it well is because it's removing some variability that Magic is naturally kind of, designed to have. I don't know. Maybe it's just they haven't explored it much, but
I'll try to counter your point a little bit. I have, because historically I love Dredge. I've played with Stinkweed Imp in many, many, many decks. I have absolutely felt like having my back to the wall where, and maybe this is just a product of, being in a losing game, but I have felt in cases where I'm losing the game, Stinkweed Imp being a death touch blocker is the only thing that like is keeping me alive. And now I have to decide, I'm stuck on 4 mana. Do I try to draw a card off the top and get the 5th land that I need to cast something? Or do I just dredge Stinkweed Imp again, spend my entire turn playing him again to block this attack again? Like, I have certainly felt completely stuck with my back against the wall because of dredge, which I suppose it's an upside because it's an option. Now I have the option. I could just
also
guarantee a death toucher.
And in addition, you're furthering the strategy of filling your graveyard if you buy another turn. The fact that you can guarantee Stinkweed Imp as a draw is the problem. Like, if the ability was, instead of you guarantee it as a draw, you shuffle it in instead of, like, where you just don't guarantee it as a draw, I think would be at least my problem isn't that, like, the design space is unfixable. I just don't think it's balanced in a way, and it is... I get why you love it. It is super powerful. I just don't know how you defend that, like, bro, this thing is not balanced. And it sucks to play against because
I acknowledged it wasn't balanced when I started it. That's why they didn't print the cards past Ravnica with Dredge, because they just it's
also really repetitive, which is another like little nick against it. Like, I mean, I'm thinking about Gitrog or whatever, where you are constantly
stupid
salvage.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's probably the most damning thing about it is how consistently like repetitive it can lock itself into. It's just like not that probably fun to play against at the end of the day too,
Well, like I was trying to illustrate, it isn't the most fun to play with sometimes too. Like, you do feel trapped. Like, I know Stinkweed Imp is good and he's like preventing me from dying, but I'm not furthering my game plan by playing him and blocking again and again. Like, yes, Dredge fills my graveyard, but if you're stuck on mana or something and also on the back foot, like, filling your graveyard usually doesn't result in you getting ahead because you're still having to block and keep yourself alive and you're stuck on mana and like, it's not always a win. And it sometimes traps you into feeling like you have to dredge when maybe the best choice would just be to draw 2 or 3 cards over the course of a couple turns and take the 10, 15 damage you might have to take. I don't know. It's a very minor downside, and like I said, it's not a bad.
Have you ever run into a situation where you were close to milling yourself? That's just a kind of a weird ask, maybe, but like,
I don't think so. That's the other thing too. Yeah, it's like your library just is way too large of a resource.
In limited, I could see it. Like, I think Stinkweed was in Modern Horizons 1, I think. Limited, I could see it. If you dredge twice, your your library's like, it's gone.
Half your library's gone. Yeah. Yeah, and weirdly, side note, I don't know why Stinkweed Imp has never been. His Oracle text is not Death Touch. And I don't know why. I believe it is identical to Death Touch, but they have never oracled his text to be Death Touch.
No, it says combat damage, doesn't it? So is Death Touch any damage?
Oh, you're right. Death Touch is any damage. Oh, that's why. When it deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature. Yeah, okay. So it is a worse Death Touch.
I would still be fine with them just...
See, Stinkweed Imp is balanced. What are you even saying?
Yeah, if you use a fight effect, he can't kill it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
So silly. No, I didn't mean to poop on Dredge. Dredge is really strong. I definitely have put it in a lot of decks.
No, I figured it would be contentious. I have hatred towards Moldervine Cloak because I remember we didn't play that. And then you put it in one of your Pauper EDH decks, and I was like, this card is insufferable. I can't fucking get rid of this. You permanently add +3/+3 to any creature you want. I kill the creature, you just get... It's like a better version of a Rancor. I hate playing against Moldervine Cloak and Pauper because there's so few ways to deal with artifacts and enchantments, let alone ones that just recur basically for free all the time. I hated it. Hate Moldavine Cloak. All right. Dredge is done. Taylor, you have a number one mechanic.
Right. If it isn't Exalted, do you have any idea what do you think my number one is, Kyle?
Let me ask you this. Is it more recent?
No.
It's not.
It is definitely in the Boomer Magic era. Like, or you know what I mean? Like the pre-fire design, like pre-Kaladesh, for sure. Pre-Ixalan. I think it's pre-Ixalan. Pretty sure.
Damn, I don't know. I really thought it would be Exalted, but I thought that might even be too boring.
It plays well with Exalted.
Plays well with it.
Bushido.
Proliferate, motherfuckers. It's proliferate. Proliferate is the greatest.
Wow, very cool.
Because, one, it is scalable with the game as more counter types come out. It incentivizes having a wide board. I also put populate in parentheses because I love tokens. So, like it's obviously, in my mind, not quite as powerful in general as proliferate. But I see them as kind of the same energy. But yeah, it makes it so you can hit your opponent for 1 poison and put it into a poison deck. You can make it you have a planeswalker deck. All of a sudden, it's boosting up loyalty. You have it speeds up sagas.
Energy.
It turns -1/-1 counters into killing things, like kind of like a leeching poison.
Yeah.
It's good in like energy. It is so interesting. Not interesting because it's actually not that like complex, but it also satisfies the numbers get big fast type of Magic I like to play. Doubling Seasons is like the best Magic card that's ever been printed. It explains why I think Proliferate's the best mechanic of all time. So.
Wow.
What I also think is funny is that they also designed battles. Battles are actually anti-synergistic with proliferate, which I think is actually kind of interesting. I don't know how they figured it out, but yeah. Because all you could do is increase the counters, but you as the controller want to decrease them. So I just thought that was clever. But yeah, I freaking love proliferate.
Wow.
All right,
I guess proliferate does not play well with Exalted. But
it does because you have lots of bodies, and it incentivizes like them.
Yeah, I guess if you're playing like Exalted and counters, but then you wouldn't be playing Exalted because you'd be attacking with everything that's getting buffed.
That's true,
and not just one guy.
Okay, you're right. It's bad. All right, shut the fuck up. I'm stupid sometimes.
All right, proliferate sucks ass. Carver, you're number one. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I like proliferate too. I don't know if it was intentional foresight of them to just say choose any number of permanents with counters on them, permanents and or players, it specifies, with counters on them. Any counter, any permanent, any player. I mean, they
even
just
like
covered
the oil
all
counters
the bases.
in Phyrexia. Will be one which is a parasitic mechanic. It works with proliferate. Like I like cards that have like literally a one-off design, what they call the counter like Gibzor energy, like some made-up word, right? It still would work with proliferate, and I think that's awesome. And it's fun. Speeding up any of these
that's a good point.
Timing based, because like a lot of things with time counters, right? They're balanced around that, how long that takes, and to cheat that, like that's the only way you can cheat with time is with this mechanic. And I love that it can work with poison. I think that's really cool. So it also makes Atraxa cool. I know everyone hates Atraxa. She's probably like the most popular commander of all time, but I love that card. It's because proliferate's fun. It's just like the most fun. Like to me, that's what the spirit of Magic is. It's just like more dumb shit, and like I don't know. That to me is like the fun part of Magic is that kind of mechanic. So that's my little bias kicking in.
Yeah, proliferate has been like fairly decently balanced over the years too. There's no over the top offenders of proliferate like they've done with Evoke most recently, just kind of like pushing the power way too far and making cards really annoying to play against with all the free Evoke.
And you can make any card a proliferate card by taking an existing card and then adding one word sentence proliferate. They have the 2 mana instant draw card proliferate, and so I love that it can just be stapled onto whatever existing thing, so it can.
Yeah, and it will always work.
Yeah, it's
There's
and it's
so
simple.
many little counters all over the place.
Yeah, it's simple. It works the way you think it would. It does. Sometimes mechanics don't work together the way you hope they do, but proliferate always does.
It doesn't work with suspend. You can't counter your opponent's
Good.
suspend with it. So think about that.
You're right. Well, good, because suspend's already got enough problems. We don't need to be fucking with that shit.
I love proliferate too. I find putting it in the cube. I love putting the, let's say, lower cost or thrumming bird or what's the one they made recently that's 2 mana and it draws a card and proliferates. I forget, but the name exactly. But there's cards. Contentious plan. Yeah, cards like that. I love adding them to the cube. Smell Fear, I think, is a fight spell that has proliferate on it. Like, because there's so many, like in the cube. Speaking to your point, Taylor, about how there's so many different types of counters or ways to get counters, -1, -1, +1, +1. Having an ability like that can kind of glue in a lot of those abilities together and kind of keep them, I don't know, kind of all working with each other. So that's at least one way that I look at proliferate. You know what I mean? I don't really have a big feeling about it other than that, but yeah. So very cool.
All right, Carver.
Nice.
What's your?
It's a pretty. I mean, that's just like a solid pick. It is just a very good mechanic. They've made it for a long time. They keep making it because it's really fun and it just works with everything always. Yeah, it's a very solid mechanic to have as a number one. That's a good one.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for approving my taste.
You're welcome. All right, Carby, what do you got?
Yeah, let me judge you.
Well, I'm curious.
I'm gonna guess. Wait, yeah,
Go
let's
for
guess.
it.
Okay, is
You
that what
can
you were
guess
gonna say?
if you want. You're probably not going to guess it. Would be my guess. My guess would be. You're
Oh
not
well,
gonna
you
guess.
said.
What is it?
Okay. I was gonna guess Graft.
I think Graft is kind of bad, honestly.
What? Dude,
I
Graft
love
is sick, and it works with
I
proliferate.
love that Simic. Okay, we're gonna. I don't want to get off topic too much, but that Simic starter deck is
yes.
that has Simic Guildmage on the cover and comes with Experiment Garage is my very first purchase of Magic ever. So I bought it at like a Target or something like that, and I bought it like multiple years after Dissension came out. But it was it was my first thing that I got of Magic, and yeah, so I definitely have a soft spot in my heart for Graft. But like, come on, Simic is kind of bad. Like. Or Graft, sorry, is kind of bad. Like Simic Initiate should be an 0/1 that comes with a +1/+1 counter and then moves, not a 0/0 that like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like what?
Yeah, they all die.
They're
all
so
die
bad.
Graft.
Yeah, they kind of Graft is not that great. No, my number one is relatively recent, and it's because I played a decent amount of the limited environment in Arena, and I love it. It's Adventure. And Taylor mentioned something about it earlier, and I'm not sure how you feel about it.
Wow.
Oh my god, it's Adventure!
Yeah, I love it, dude. It's so good. Like the spell plus creature all on one face. I kind of like that the cards don't flip over to do it. You know what I mean? They're all very simple. They're all like reasonably costed. Like the one that I have right in front of me is Foulmire Knight. So yeah, I think the ability is really good. I think the mechanic is really good. I'd like to see more of it. Yeah, I think it's great. I don't know what else to say about it. Just that limited environment was a really fun one because there's just always something to cast and do. You know what I mean? Like each card being like multiple things to do, similar to Flashback, similar to Morph. You know, as a kind of a theme that went through a lot of my picks. So yeah, Taylor, you seem so. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it because you you're so emphatic.
Okay, so
You seem to have a reaction.
all right. My hot take about Adventures is it is the reason everyone hates modern Magic design because everything is so pushed is because what Adventures
Brazen
does
Borrower, yeah.
is why would I cast a spell when now all my creatures have the spells on them? So now my spells have to be twice as good because like in what scenario would like the problem is just the having everything being 2 cards per card you draw a card is now twice as powerful. You never win, the games never end because you have infinite value it pushed everything too quickly, and I think it really de-emphasized playing spells, or that spells now have to be proportionally as strong as a creature and a spell as two, and the creature usually has an ability that's an ETB or another effect. So it's like, how do you compete with adventure cards? Because I agree that all the adventure cards are costed are great, and they're I think fairly in general balance, but having access to that much effect on one piece of cardboard has shifted the power scale of drawing one card. Even
It's interesting you mention it because
it's pretty petty, but that's my
I get
beef
it.
with it.
No, I agree, because the way adventure works is it seems like the type of mechanic that the way you would balance it is, yes, it's 2 cards in one, so both cards will cost more than they should, right? That's the sacrifice you make, is like, it's 2 cards in one, so you have to pay more to get both of the effects. That's kind of how like the original Fuse cards were, where it was like 2 slightly overcosted abilities in one card, but you could pay both costs to get both effects at once. And it was like really expensive, but you got 2 cards in one. So, like that's the price you pay. However, yeah, adventure cards do not feel overcosted in any capacity. They're almost all very perfectly balanced and costed. And you don't really have to choose between one or the other. There's no sacrifice. You don't have to. There's no resource to manage. It's like, no, you cast the spell part first and get a good spell, and then you cast the creature part after and get a good creature. Like, I agree that it does feel like really, really strong and pushed. And the fact that you don't, there's just no concession. It's not like, well, if you cast the spell, then you don't get the creature. That's how that's like how split cards worked originally, right? It's 2 overcosted cards and you get one or the other, but they're both on one card.
Now,
Yeah, I mean, like Bone Crusher Giant and Brazen Borrower just kind of utterly ruined everyone's, I think, feeling on adventure. Obviously not Carver. He loves them.
see, but what I will say, to come to the defense of adventure at the same time, I also love adventure cards. They feel so fun.
I was gonna say that too.
Yeah.
I weirdly like them though.
Yeah,
They're
I don't have
crazy
any
strong.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't have any actual negative feelings for adventures, because it's like, I think in and of itself they're well designed and they're fun to use. But my concern is like, what does this do to a game with this mechanic as it's trying to design a consumer product, which is like, is that really fair for what this conversation is really about? But like, that's my beef with it, is like, yeah, it's kind of like spells feel less powerful in a format in which you have a spell that is a full spell and a creature on one card, but I still love them. And I think the second whack at adventures feel much more in line with what I feel is like kind of like old split cards, but they have the technology to actually split them into 2 separate cards with the rules. That's like how I feel about them now. And like, there's so much, I think the problem with adventures when they first were printed, adventure payoffs were not necessary. I think that's kind of my big.
Oh,
like,
sure, yeah,
the payoff is the payoff is you get 2 cards on one. You don't need to then be double incentivized on top of it, and I don't think they really did that in the new cycle. And I think they're way more interesting because it allows them to create more like synergy cards on one, right? Like, you can have a card that cares about creature types, and then the spell that's attached to it is milling a player. So it's like, oh, this one card can make it itself exist, which is kind of like a cool thing. So, I like them a lot more than I dislike them, but I had to share my hat.
I fully understand your guys' points. I get it. I guess I don't know if you guys are coming at it from like again, I like it for like the limited implication, and then especially when I'm looking at like my cube, I love being able to throw adventure cards in because it just like adds cards and complexity without actually like adding card count. So it doesn't feel like it's watering down the cube. It feels like I'm densifying it. And then I also am not a huge fan of. In general, I try to limit how many double face cards are in there because I don't like the idea of mechanically touching a card and pulling it out. And, so I kind of like the idea that adventure kind of solved that little gripe that maybe is just to me only. But
that's actually a really cool thing. Good way to point out is like, it's like the culmination of all the technology they've assembled to finally figure out 2 cards on one piece of cardboard usable in a one sleeve format. They finally figured out with Adventures between transforming, the graveyard cards and like all this stuff. So I think playing with them as game pieces, Adventure is one of the best they've ever done in terms of just nailing all aspects between how it feels to play, the strength, and design space. I think they've done a really good job with it otherwise. But what it means for Magic the Gathering meta design as a whole, I feel a little iffy about, but the actual design of the mechanic itself, it makes sense. It rules.
Yeah.
I did have it on here as when I felt I had it couldn't put it on the list because I felt weird about it, but otherwise I'm with you.
No, that's fair. I like your guys' points that it does like Brazen Bower is a really strong. It's a great example, right? And Bone Crusher is another good one. That it's a very strong 2-mana instant and a 3-mana flash flying creature. Like it is both of those things. But I guess I never really thought that it was is that much better than other busted cards that they've printed that just have one mode or just multiple abilities. I don't know. I guess I never thought about it like that.
Like consider
but it's a good point though.
Consider Brazen Borrower against something like a Snapcaster Mage or a Venser, Shaper Savant. Like, how does Brazen Borrower... I'm actually asking because I haven't really thought... just occurred to me. How does a Brazen Borrower match up to something like Snapcaster Mage, right? Like, Snapcaster's versatility is insane, right? You pay 2, you play him, you get to cast another Bolt from the graveyard, or you get to cast another, Remand from the graveyard or something, but that card has to be in your graveyard first, and you are then expending it from your graveyard to exile it. Where you think about Brazen Borrower, he sits in your hand, and it's like you can either play him as a tempo play and bounce their card, which is like kind of what Snapcaster Mage would do to begin with. That's you play Snapcaster to deal with a threat on board, and then as a follow-up, you would still get to have a 3/1 flash flying flyer that like Snapcaster sits on the ground and is a 2/1, and you had to actually have another card to use him.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're. I know
you have
I think you're
experience with
underestimating.
Snapcaster,
Well, Snapcaster. If we went for favorite cards, I know you always roll your eyes at me, Kyle, but Snapcaster is probably my favorite card ever. Snapcaster is. I think you're maybe not fully seeing the versatility of Snapcaster. Like Snapcaster, you can just like cryptic command. You can cryptic command their lands and then draw a card.
Problem, I think that's an apple to oranges.
Yeah.
This the problem.
Yeah.
I think this is what I was going to say to your example, Kyle. What makes Adventure so powerful is you don't have to make the choice for when to deploy the second part.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of trying to get at was that. Yeah, it's just. Weirdly, though, okay, let's talk about Brazen Borrower for a second more. You would never play the adventure part of that card as a single card in your deck. 2 mana, bounce a non-land permanent. You would never play that in like a deck that wins any games. That's just such a bad ability.
Totally.
As a single card, you just wouldn't do it. You also wouldn't play a 3 mana 3/1 flash flyer that can't block flyers.
It can only block flyers.
But suddenly.
Sure, yes.
Can block only creatures with flying. Oh, that's better than I thought.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, but you're right. No one would play.
But like you combine them, and now suddenly it's way too good.
And it's funny because it's not even just like, oh, it's playable. It's like oppressively playable. So I think what makes it so complicated is actually a really subtle thing about what made the Giant a pain in the ass is it itself is a curve. It's a good turn 2 and turn 3 play. So think about how many decks now you don't like. You always have this card is my turn 2 and turn 3 play is so powerful on consistency.
Yeah, like decks. You would probably just play Bone Crusher Giant without
Easily.
the spell half as a red deck wins card. A 3 mana 4/3 that shocks them if they target it. I mean, like that card's insane. And then you also put a 2 mana shock that can't be prevented on the first half. It's just ridiculous.
The last thing I will add as well, it also protects the creature for the future if you cast the adventure. Like you can respond to being thought seized. All right, I'll just Bone Crusher your face. You can't pick my Bone Crusher anymore. So it allows you to like play around, destroy or discard target non-creature spells because you can tuck them away into an untargetable zone. That's my only real beef with adventures is like they're kind of tough to interact with in between playing them. Like having no way to like, but I guess that's kind of what they wanted. I don't know, but like the idea of after you cast the spell slide, it goes to exile and is safe there can make it kind of tough. So like once you've like it's coming.
Your
but,
point
yeah.
about 2 cards in one is one I didn't really think about. That, and that's the one that's resonating with me the most as a potential problem, because like even a double face card typically is either one side or the other and not both. And
Yes,
so I don't
exactly.
know that maybe Adventure is one of the very, very few, except maybe Flashback 2, with very, very few examples of a card that's kind of like 2 cards on 1 card. So yeah, I could see that being an issue. And then certainly, yeah,
And think about like what happens when you Bone Crusher, kill a creature, the creature comes in, he trades, and then you grow it back. That 1 card is now 4 cards. Like it like I think the problem is it multiplies too quickly. As soon as like you get 1 card advantage on adventure cards is just like so much advantage now. 2 for
Yeah,
ones become
actually,
4
it's
for
crazy.
ones.
I brought up Snapcaster, but like, wait, does this even work? Can you Snapcaster the spell half of an adventure in a
Yes.
graveyard? A creature?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So like Brazen Borrow and Snapcaster Mage even pair together beautifully. Like you could Snapcaster into the petty theft half of Brazen Borrower to put him back, so then you can play him again. I mean, like, yeah, you're right. It multiplies crazy. Like you're always getting 2 cards for 1 card. It's just
So I did not mean to make it a negative thing, but I do think what's
no, it was a
interest-
fun discussion.
What I
to
like
have.
about Adventure is it has both the high highs and low lows. I think what makes it such a powerful mechanic is how much interaction it is, and like it's fun to play. It feels good.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the designs are kind of fun. So I get it. Mad respect to the adventure heads out there. I love Lucky Clover, even though it was a degenerate piece of shit card.
so I'm seeing that it is a creature in the graveyard, so Snap can't target it.
Oh, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, I forget. I think in the hand it's a spell, though.
No, any
isn't
other
it?
zone,
Or is it
any
always a
other zone,
creature?
but on the stack, it's a creature.
Oh, okay. Right.
Okay, cool.
It
So
is
it
not a
cannot.
spell
All right.
until you're casting the spell side. Otherwise, it's a creature. So it gets around duress. Okay, but it can still get thought seized.
But you can still cast it, like you said. Like if you have 2 mana open and they try to Thoughtseize you, can just go whoops.
Yeah.
Good shit.
Not this guy. All right. I'm going to executively decide to move forward.
Granted.
You guys all know my number 1.
Unearth. It's Unearth. Unearth
Carver,
your
what's
number
your
1
guess?
pick.
Just kidding. Yeah, it is. It is Unearth. Unearth is my true love. I would have married Unearth if I could.
You tried. I remember you trying. The state just wouldn't allow it.
That's okay. Don't talk about that, please. That's embarrassing. I think this is the coolest mechanic ever. I think Cedrus, the Traitor King, my longtime EDH general, my first and foremost. I've had him as my general for like, I don't know, since I've been playing EDH, 15 years. He is my one and only. Unearth is just, it is the literal pinnacle of what I want to do in Magic. Reanimate is my favorite archetype, and Unearth is the ultimate coolest payoff you could possibly imagine for reanimating. It's you cheat in a creature for way less than it costs, but you only get the 1 attack because it's exiled at the end of the turn. So there's like a very clear drawback, but it's just massively explosive. It gives you an excuse to run the most ridiculously high-costed cards that have good, big, splashy effects because you can just bring them into play for 3 mana, even though it's a 9 mana creature or whatever it is. Like, it feels insanely balanced. There, of course, are ways to work around it, and that's like part of building Cedrus as an EDH general. But when it came out, and when you play it in Constructed or Standard at the time, like, Unearth was just this cool splashy effect. You know, it it is just flashback for creatures, really, if we're being frank about it. But it's just so fucking fun and powerful, and I absolutely love Unearth, and it is my all-time favorite mechanic. What do you guys think?
I have always thought Unearth is cool. I don't have the internal deep love for it, but I get it and I respect it. I think it's fun. I think it's allows some real degenerate sacrifice in response kind of stuff. So it's like a mechanic
You
that
can't,
I have.
You can't sacrifice, because if it were to leave play, it gets exiled instead. So
Well,
the only way around it is with
but you can still use it like instead of just letting.
Yeah,
it
I suppose I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so you get like 2 sacrifice triggers with 1 card, if you will. But I think it's really cool. I think what it allows decks to do is really fun. It's just not a play style that I like ever really clicked with, and I haven't it feels like it's my rival, right? Because that Sadris deck has been my opponent for 15 plus years. So like I've seen so many iterations of Unearth that it feels like it's coming for me specifically.
It's also, though, it is the type of mechanic that you like. It's heads up. It's in play. You see Cedrus, you see my graveyard, and you go, okay, he has 8 mana, so he can unearth 2 things, and then maybe he has like a spell as backup for something else. So like, it plays mind games with people, but it also like lets you know what I'm gonna do. It's there, but like that's why that mechanic is so fun, because like unearthing for 3 mana some giant creature, like sometimes it just feels like you can't even, like, it's coming, but you can't stop it anyway. Like, what am I going to do to an Inferno Titan that's being unearthed next turn? It's like, kill it when it comes into play, but then it already gets its enter the battlefield trigger, and then I'm wasting a kill spell on, him spending 3 mana, and then he just unearths something else anyway, and like, I don't know, I love Unearth so much. It has brought me so much
It's
joy
interesting.
over the years.
I'm looking at Unearth cards, and I'm like, man, like, there's like, I'm like, none of the, other than Cedrus, there's a couple that drop off the page. Probably one of my favorite arts of all time, Viscera Dragger, is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I was going to mention him. Yeah, I had to talk about him.
Just, dude, so amazing. But no, no, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But Cedrus is like, I wish Unearth was on more stuff, because I think the ability, Kyle, I agree with like everything you're saying. I feel like if the ability was on more cards, I think I would be more excited about it. But it's like, I don't know why they seem to not use it all that much.
Yeah, they printed it in Alara originally, and then they brought it back recently for the Brothers War stuff, and a lot of that was cool too.
The Mishra is a pretty sick card with Meld too.
Yeah, I also, if we can, I guess talk, like you were saying, philosophically, Taylor, and how certain abilities like speak to you differently. Something about Unearth also, like, I love the color combination as well of blue, black, and red as the just reanimator package. Like, it makes so much sense, especially when Shards of Alara came out and they printed these 3 color, really defined shards of color combinations, and they were all so distinct. Like Bant had, Exalted, which is I mentioned earlier, and this was Unearth, and I don't know, I'm almost having a hard time like talking about it, because I think so fondly of it and I love it so much, but I could say so much about it, but like my mind is jumping all over the place, so maybe I just won't say anything else. I just love it.
What I'll say is
it is how I want to play Magic. It's just how I want to play Magic into an ability. It's so perfect.
Yeah, I don't really. I wish I had more to say other than like that's why I say it is my rival rather than something I hate, because it's like hard to play against or around. But like I respect that type of, it's like the black players, the Golgari players version of just like going wide with tokens, like that's just your version of that exact same level of feeling of, because like to me Abzan is like the now my wedge that like identifies the game I love, but I'm Selesnya like core, and then I love splashing black type of stuff. So like that's why
Okay.
I appreciate the unearth, but fuck Cedrus. All my homies hate
I mean, it's
that
kind of
guy.
flashback on creatures. That's what I'm saying.
Worship
I wish they
Cedrus.
used it more because
Yeah.
because again, like Cedrus, yeah, he is a traitorous little guy, but but even in Cedrus, I know you've made efforts recently to try to make him use the unearth ability Cedrus grants more, because it is
Yes.
so cool.
Which I thought was successful. Last time we played, I
Yes.
played him every single game, and like he was my kind of win condition.
Yeah,
most
I
of
would
the
agree
time.
with that. And when you start using the unearth, it's like an extra level of fear because it's like everything in your graveyard is just so unlocked, and it's all
Yeah.
just because of him. You almost don't even need reanimation.
Yeah,
spell.
everything is the biggest. Everything's an Omega level threat.
Yeah.
Everything is so super important, and you don't know how to interact with it because like he's always has stuff to put on the stack after you cast it to get around it. It's a nightmare.
But in truth, I don't know how to evaluate Unearth almost past Cedrus because that's been like my number one way. I know there was a time I tried to make a Pauper EDH deck out of Firefield Ogre, but I don't know why I picked him.
Interesting.
You don't remember that one? Yeah, that was one of the. I don't know why I chose him, but yeah.
So, do you want to hear my belief? Is that flashback on spells feels like you're getting to use your toy again. Unearth on creatures feels like you're trying to get something in the graveyard, and you get it out of play a second time. I think a lot of people, it's like not as popular as flashback. I think it's not a very popular mechanic. Is the reason they've.
I don't know. Playing with your toy again, that's literally what Unearth is. I like that. That is a great way to describe it. It's,
I'm talking about just perspective because it is like that, but I
Yeah.
think that it being on a creature changes the formula in some people's heads about it doesn't feel as. It feels like the unearthed half is like a weaker version rather than the same thing again. Does that?
yeah, because it's only going to come back for that turn, and it's hasted. But I can tell you, Carver, because I built, of course, Unearth in Shards of Alara when it came out. The deck was similarly, it was pretty explosive and it was pretty relentless, and it was really fun. You could just attack with everything all the time because it was going to come back again. And a lot of times, just attacking twice with like a Sidraxis Spectre, for instance, like that is usually enough to win games. Like attacking with creatures twice is usually enough. If you attack with 3, 4, 5 different creatures 2 times each, that's enough to win. So I never felt like I really got to keep this in play to keep pressuring them. It's like it was just a relentless assault. No matter what they did to me, I didn't care because it was just going to come back from my graveyard anyway. I used to play Dregscape Zombie, which was just a cute little guy who was a 2-mana 2/1, and he unearthed for 1 black. So, on the face up, he's just a 2-mana 2/1, which isn't a horrible rate. It's obviously not great, but it's not bad either. You can chump block. You can just swing recklessly and just bring it back for 1 single black mana to just pop another 2 damage out there. Then you pair it with what the hell was the card called? Scourge something. Scourge Devil, which when it entered the battlefield, all your creatures get +1/+0 until end of turn. So you do something like you unearth Dregscape Zombie, you unearth Sidraxis Spectre, then you unearth Scourge Devil, and suddenly you're attacking for 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 damage on turn 5 or 6. That's just kind of how it played. You just played on curve. You never stopped attacking. You didn't care if things died or traded or whatever, and it was just a very high pressure deck. Really fun to play. That's how I built it.
No, the way you illustrate it there, man, it sounds freaking amazing.
Yeah. Yep. And that's sort of translated into EDH, but it's a little more combo-y, and instead of playing little guys like Dregscape Zombie, we just play, Grave Titans and Inferno Titans multiple times. So, we have some honorable mentions. Do we want to do that?
Yeah.
We are on 2.5 hours.
I can crank this out in like 2 seconds, so it won't take. I'll just run down. All right, the word ability that's the greatest of all time.
Oh yeah.
Skulk.
Skulk. Oh.
Skulk.
Yeah, dude, skulk is a cool ass word. Dumbass.
I was gonna
ability.
guess hellbent.
Cool ass word. Oh, that's a good one.
That's
too.
a good one too.
I was thinking about Hellbent was actually the award for best name to worst mechanic separation because like that ability, like every Hellbent card sucks.
Yeah. No, they're bad. Like Hellbent was so fucking shit. It was crazy. Like I remember I played that. There was some imp. It was like I think it was a 4-mana 2/1 flyer, and then with Hellbent it got +2/+2, so you ended up with a 4-mana 4/3 flyer when you have no cards in hand.
Yeah, it's like sick.
Like it's horrible.
It's so funny.
It's so bad. Yeah, Hellbent was never good. What Hellbent needed to be was 1 card or less, and not entirely empty. That would have been fun.
So then my other award I have here is the award to the best MTGA Magic Gathering Arena mechanic. That's Mutate. Mutate is the best mechanic of all time if you're playing on a digital platform.
Yeah, if it's automated, I bet.
Dude, but Ikoria is some of the most fun I've ever had playing Magic. Mutate is easily the best mechanic of all time, but only because I'm playing a computer game. It doesn't feel like it belongs to Magic. Though my other actual honorable mentions is modal dual face cards, the ones that have the backsides are tapped lands.
Oh sure.
Sure.
Absolutely love those. Explore, having basically like Growth Spire built in as a mechanic. It just the mana dork in me loved Explore, even though it's not like a very interesting or good mechanic. Surveil by far is like the greatest thing of all time.
Yes,
I like it more
love
than
Surveil.
Love Surveil. And I think that was it. Oh, and Landfall to me was like my number 6. I picked it over Delirium, but Landfall was really, really close. I love the idea of lands mattering. I just love that. That's one of the best parts of Magic is that their resource system are game pieces. So those are my honorable mentions.
So my first honorable mention is pretty simple, but I just really like it. Prowess. I like.
Prowess.
I loved when they put it in. I think Cons was, again, I go back to Cons so much, but Cons was the first set I remember it being in, and just extending, casting instant sorceries to non-creatures and giving your creatures with prowess that benefit. Just, I don't know. It's it makes blue creatures good, honestly. There's so many blue creatures that blue generally has bad ones, but then once you put prowess on them, all of a sudden you cast a couple draw spells, and now you're attacking for good amounts of damage. So love.
Turn that draw spell offensively.
Yeah,
awesome.
I love prowess. So that's a good one. One that I have really strong memories of, but didn't think it was like, I didn't want to say it was one of my favorites, is Madness. Shadows over Innistrad. I have a lot of fond memories of casting Fiery Temper while discarding it to Air of Falcon Wrath and for its Madness cost after discard to Air of Falcon Wrath, and killing my opponent's thing and attacking him for 3 in the air repeatedly. Like, so there's and there's other ones too, of course, from that set that I'm fond of too. I don't know much about Madness other than that set, but again, playing Limited in that set, I played a lot of Madness. So, and I always thought it was a very cool ability. Like it's you're discarding a card, you get a benefit from it at the right time for a very cheap effect. It just feels like when those decks pop off, they just feel like everything's working, and it just, I don't know, I really like that. And then if for a third honorable mention was Cascade. I think Cascade is awesome. I don't know. I think I just don't have enough direct experience with it other than Enlisted Worm Pauper to really like say one way or the other how it stacks to the other abilities that I mentioned, or other mechanics that I mentioned. But Cascade is just amazing. Like, that's another one of those abilities where like every creature that has Cascade is not like a bad creature in and of itself, and then you get another spell on top of it. Very good. So yeah, those are my 3 honorable mentions.
Cascade feels like one of those other mechanics that's a little bit broken, where like a 4-mana 3/2 haste is good, and then you get another card on top of it. Like, come on, man.
Popular opinion, I like what they did with Discover. I think Cascade's really fun. if you play it fair, but no one plays it fair and kind of ruined it.
No.
But I love Cascade.
Yeah,
and
Discover's a
Discover.
good balance.
Yeah.
My honorable mentions, I only have 2. Well, 3. The first is flickering effects. Momentary blink with... Oh my god, I don't know what the guy's name is.
Mangara.
I'm gonna
Mangara
look it up right now. Yes, Mangara, thank you. Dude, momentary blink Mangara blew my fucking mind when my older brother Ryan told me about how that works. You tap exile. His effect is that he exiles himself and a permanent. So with that effect on the stack, you flicker Mangara. He comes back, but then still gets to exile the thing you targeted. It's the same way. It's actually why they reworded Oblivion Ring in subsequent printings of it, because Oblivion Ring became like a very staple effect in Magic as a whole. The enchantment that exiles something until the enchantment leaves play. Oblivion Ring used to have 2 separate triggers. It would enter an exile, then when it leaves, it would return the exiled thing. So because they were 2 separate triggers, you could do the same thing you could with Mangara. Oblivion Ring would enter and exile something, then with that exile on the stack, you could flicker O-Ring, exile another thing. It was just so stupid and good, and I built a Mangara momentary blink flicker deck with flicker wisps in there as well. And love flickering as a mechanic. Super fun, super cool. Very frustrating to deal with, of course. You try to kill something and you just, nope, blink it, boop, boop, and I get a new ETB effect on top. Momentary blink also worked incredibly well with Evoke. Throw out, like I said earlier, throw out Muldrifter, blink it, draw a bunch of cards, you get to keep the flyer. Super good. Second effect that I really liked was Persist, which I thought it was interesting. We all picked a keyword as an honorable mention. Taylor picked Skulk, Carver picked Prowess, and I picked Persist. Again, I love the Graveyard. I love how Persist works with the game. It feels very fair and balanced. You get an effect when it enters, then it dies and comes back and gets a slightly weaker version of the effect, usually, because it's got the counter. And Persist was just really fun. Really cool.
Ironically, Persist is why Proliferate was number 1. Was like, I think Persist is really cool, but it's kind of complicated with +1/+1 counters because they can't.
Now, Undying with Proliferate is something you would consider, but
Right, I forgot that Persist is the +1/+1 counter one. Never mind. Yeah,
Persist.
Yeah,
Persist is to Undying what Shroud is to Hexproof,
Yeah,
where they're like, let's just make this already cool thing busted and broken instead of like balanced and fair. I still don't understand why they turned Shroud into Hexproof. I think that's like the biggest mistake Magic has ever made. Shroud was so balanced.
because
so
people were
perfect.
playing Shroud like Hexproof already, and according to Mark Rosewater, he says that was the main reason, is because people are already interpreting Shroud like Hexproof, so they're just like, all right, well,
Yeah, but that's
like,
not a.
it's so
why would you
instinctively
make the
balanced,
change
like,
because of that, though.
you can't-
That's-
Yeah, because people are stupid and don't understand the rules. Like, that's why it's balanced. Nobody can interact with it, not even me. Like, that's why the ability was so cool. Oh, man. Wow, that's a
I
shame.
don't run Magic. I'm just.
Why did you let him do that,
I don't
Taylor?
know. I'm sorry.
God.
I'll remember that for his notes for next time.
Okay, my final ability, my final honorable mention is Emerge.
Dude.
Oh, I almost
Dude.
Yeah, I almost did that because I think it's so cool. Oh,
Dude.
thank
Great
you.
Yes. I know, Carver, you were going to appreciate it specifically because you played Wretched Griffs in your Pauper Tron deck, and it was just such an insanely powerful card. We also, I played Standard at the time where Decimator of the Provinces was legal, and he was just such an absolute fucking bomb. They didn't really print cards like that big and explosive and powerful at the time, and he was just so out of left field. He was really fun. Pairing him with Combustible Gear Hulk, ugh, that deck was so fucking nasty. So good. So yeah, Emerge, another ability that I think has a lot of potential. It's really cool, but they only printed it in the given set. I think the Eldritch Moon is what it was called. Yes, Eldritch Moon. They never really returned to Emerge. They printed the one that I've talked to you about, Carver, that Red Dragon in Modern Horizons 2. that makes all of your cards have emerge.
What?
I don't know if you remember
No,
that
I don't.
card. Yeah, it's like an Eldrazi dragon, but it costs red. So I think the card is kind of colorless, but the emerge cost is red, so it's got a red color identity, and it's a legendary dragon that makes it so that all the cards in your hand have emerge. It's really cool, and I was tempted to build a mono red.
So
EDH
Modern
deck around
Horizons 3, it's a colorless card.
Oh, 3. Sorry, 3. Yes,
yeah,
not 2,
9
3.
colorless, emerge for 6 colors, 2 red. And then, hold on, I gotta zoom in a little bit. When you cast this spell, you may exile your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. And then each creature spell you cast has emerge. The emerge cost is equal to its mana cost.
Sick.
Yeah,
Sick.
just Haragast is his name. Haragast. He's an
'cause
Eldrazi dragon.
I forgot
just
that
so cool.
Modern Horizons 3 had the Eldrazi like theme in it, so that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep, Emerge. One of the coolest abilities they've ever made that just never really got its proper day in the sun. But I am seeing they brought it back a little bit in Modern Horizons 3. I forgot they did that, so that's good.
I love
It's a very
Emerge, man.
cool
It's
effect.
it's actually simpler than on first read. I feel like it takes like 2 reads, but then once you read it twice, I feel like it's pretty simple to actually mechanically work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Emerge. I love Elder Deep Fiend and Wretched Griff. I know you mentioned that one. I love the blue-green
Yes.
one, Lashweed Lurker. There's so many that I just I find myself always
I
putting
almost
things-
made a-
always putting these cards in my EDH decks or cubes. I love them.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't the Lashweed Lurker
Yeah.
in your cube still?
No, I think
Or
it,
no,
it
did he get
recently
cut?
got
Oh, he
cut,
is?
but it's been in there for a long
Yeah,
time.
it's
Like
hard.
that, those cards are just so good. Like you're sacking a creature, so you are losing something, but you can get the cost down to like a blue green. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah, for a 5/6, and like you almost always have synergy with sacking or some kind of recursion to mitigate
Yes.
the sack. Yeah,
very good.
I love
Damn.
Emerge. Yep. Well, that was really fun, and almost 3 hours went by in the fucking blink of an eye. That's ridiculous. And we still easily could have talked for probably twice this amount of time. So yeah, I don't know. That was
yeah,
sweet.
this was
I had
great.
a lot of fun.
Yeah, that
sorry.
was annoying how much fun it was. Yeah, because I had to definitely hold back things, and like there are even more mechanics I didn't even bring up that I really wanted to talk about.
Yeah, you had like eight honorable mentions, and you were clustering them together in groups. of
Yeah,
three.
it was. I even get to talk about ones that I hate, sets that are sick. Kithkin,
Dude,
I miss you.
Oh my God, Kithkin! How dare you bring them up? I love him so much. We could have a separate episode where we do like 5 least favorite mechanics.
Oh,
and
don't worry,
I don't know if that'd be
brother.
like
That's
too
happening.
negative. We just be like ripping on stuff for 3 hours, but fuck it, it'll be fun.
Look, we can manage to talk about good things in there. I can figure it out, but yeah, Magic the Gathering. I have a passion for it. Unfortunately, I wish I had a passion towards something that mattered, but I don't. Okay, it's about cardboard.
Yeah, that's
I'm not
lifelong
to do any
affliction,
meta
really.
analysis already, but I'm a little shocked at how different all of our like
I expected
Yeah.
someone to be
I
like, "Oh,
wanted
this
to
was
say
a-
that too. I not only did we not have any of the same mechanics in the top 5, but even our honorable mentions were
Yeah.
all completely different.
Holy
Like
shit.
we each named 10 unique mechanics that were our
Oh,
favorites.
I forgot
That's
to. There was one I
crazy.
didn't even mention. I forgot to say the objectively best designed mechanic is raid. Because it teaches you to cast,
Really?
cast spells in your second
that's the
main
reason.
phase. Yeah, that's the
Interesting.
only reason. I just think it's
okay,
really
so it's
clever.
a meta ability.
Yeah,
teaches your.
I feel like that
teaches
should just
idiots
be
how
an
to play the
evergreen
game.
mechanic, but yeah, that was the other honorable mention I forgot.
Oh, okay.
And that wasn't on anyone's list either.
No, well, who the fuck would pick raid?
Okay,
All the
that's
cards suck.
Imagine
with
the
raid
noob
mostly
that casts
anyway.
his raid card first, then attacks. Silly.
Yeah, what a fucking.
Or
noob.
it's a sign
Imagine
of
that noob.
like I don't even need this bonus. I'm just gonna do this to.
Oh, he's flexing. He's
Be a
flexing.
tough guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well.
All right. Well, yeah, let's wrap this up. This is the end here. I don't know what the hell we're doing next week, Taylor. We haven't talked about it at all, but nobody listens this far anyway, except Carver, apparently. And
That's why he gets invited on the show.
yeah, he got a special invite, so
my
fuck
God.
the rest of you. They're not even going to hear this part anyway. They all turn it off at the, with 2 minutes left. How dare they? All right. That's all I got. That was really fun.
We'll be back next
Time to
week,
say
everybody. We love you.
Yep.
Kisses.
Nighty night.
Alrighty. Bye, everyone.
Bye.